Hello, good morning, good afternoon. For most of you, we have a house today. So I'm just going to start bringing in the entire host panel. Coming all the way live. He is my co-host. He is my road dog. He is my partner. I'm going to say it in crime and slime all the time. He is the Pascal Robert.
Peace and greetings to the chat. Peace and greetings to the audience. Peace and greetings, Jason Miles. What's going on, brother?
So somebody brought up the fact that Gift Gab from Black Alicious passed away, and that is true. He was in very ill health. The last time I had saw him, Black Alicious was coming to the studio to get ready for something. This was probably 2017 or so. They're getting ready for a tour, and his vision was going due to diabetes. So it is a rough year for hip hop, especially for the Bay Area. You know, people that actually have a very large presence in the studio that I lived in for so many years, like Shock G, like Gab. So rough year. Shout out to the family of Gift to Gab and the Soul Size and Quantum family. That music has been a part of my life probably since I was about 14, 15 years old.
Condolences to the Bay Area, to you as well, and to all those who are fans of the brother's music. It's very sad to hear.
Oh man, he was genius man. And whenever he would show up on the scene when we were kids, it was kind of like royalty was there, but he was so cool. And coming all the way from Maine, you may know him as a very brave man because he chooses to be black in Maine. That's a brave choice. He is Marcus from the Left Flank Vets.
It's I liken myself to Machiavelli after he was pushed away to the farmlands. So yes, it's a Blackiavelli in Maine. I'm here just pontificating on politics.
Change your name to Blackiavelli. And she's back. She's been gone for a while because she is an extremely busy woman. You may know her as a political force to be reckoned with. We know her as the charming, beautiful, intelligent, fiery, fun Angela Walker.
Hey, y'all. It's an honor to be back with the fam. Honored to be back with y'all.
We miss you so much, man.
I left my dogs downstairs. We will not have that issue. They are downstairs away from everybody.
So a show that we did that we had no idea was going to blow up like it did was a show we did with Norman Finkelstein. And I don't know if you know this, Angela. Glenn Greenwald retweeted it and told his 1.6 million viewers to watch it because he said it was one of the best. What did he say?
He was impressed the way things were handled.
Yeah,
he was impressed literally to the point where in the tweet he says, "I don't usually watch shit that's 3 hours, but I watched this and I could have watched more." Yeah. The way that the difficulty in the conversation was handled is like that was it.
And I want you.
I mean, like,
as of me.
I think we all know it's all because of Angela. That was like I don't know.
It was like, look, people have the comments run the gamut. I try not to read the comments. I am a victim of my own stupidity and arrogance, and sometimes I read the comments, but they definitely run the gamut. I have stayed in contact with Norm Finkelstein, who is a cool dude to talk to, actually. And the fact that Greenwald shouted it out, it's kind of interesting. I just want to let you know, because I'm sure you didn't know, but
I didn't.
Most popular of it is the most popular episode on the audio and on the video.
That's wild as hell, because that show, I ain't gonna lie to y'all, that show did me in. I was
That was
I
the
was
most stressful
like,
episode.
Yeah, we all pretty much, and there's other behind the scenes shit that happened during that show that actually don't have anything to do with Norm. That it became a huge issue. So the fact that a lot of people get something from it, our base has grown from it. A certain appreciation for what we do has grown from it, means a lot. But the politics behind the show, if only you Negroes knew. Speaking of Negroes knowing, because we're going to be speaking with Flint Taylor, Chicago legal icon, I figured I started hitting up all the people in Chicago that I know. Common turned me down. Kanye turned me down.
Oh no.
Walter Payton's kids turned me down. So I'm
If
just
you
playing.
Negroes only knew.
Playing. I love this dude. He will be helping out when Pascal and I go on vacation. He has a show called Class Time with Kenzo Shibata. You know him as Kenzo Shibata.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Pascal. Thank you, Angela. Thank you, Marcus. Very happy to be here this morning and super excited to meet Flint. He actually represented someone I had speak to my classes, Daryl Cannon, who was tortured by John Burge and forced into a false confession and did decades in prison because of it. And now he's since passed, but he spent quite a few years speaking to students not about like stay out of trouble, but like this is what the criminal justice system is. And it was part of the coalition for the death penalty. So thank you, Jason, for inviting me in today.
Kenzo, thank you for because you really helped out, because there's a certain aspect of politics that I'm just out of the loop of, mainly because I'm not from Chicago, and you are pretty entrenched in the political system in Chicago. The only other person I know that might know Chicago politics is either Teray or Cedric. Those guys are pretty good about Chicago politics. So I made a video for the show. Our guest is going to be coming in a little bit later because he's actually representing. I was telling the guys, he's representing the man. I don't have his name right now off the top of my head, that got hogtied and killed in Greensboro, and he just flew back from Greensboro in representing this hogtie death. So here is the intro video.
I think your mayor is a wonderful fellow, but I depart radically from him when he says that he would hope that I would have all the good qualities of past mayors. There are no good qualities of past mayors to be had. None. I did not mourn at the bar of the late mayor. I regret anyone dying. I have no regrets about him leaving. He was a racist from the core, head to toe and hip to hip. There's no danger doubt about it. And he spewed and fought and oppressed black people to the point that some of them thought that was the way they were supposed to live. Just like some slaves on the plantation thought that was the way they were supposed to live. I give no hosannas to a racist, nor do I appreciate or respect his son. If his name were anything other than Daley, his campaign would be a joke. He has nothing to offer anybody but a bent-up tin can smile, no background, and he runs on the legacy of his name, an insult to common.
We come to you and ask to enforce the law, because if it is not enforced here, when will it be enforced? Are police officers going to be allowed to shoot from 90 to 100 bullets into an apartment of citizens of this country, whether they be black or white, poor, rich, Panther or not? To use the color of our laws to do that, to tear the place asunder, to beat people, to shoot them, to maim them for life, to kill them? Are they going to be able to? That is the question that you have to ask yourselves. These defendants as police officers, are they going to be allowed to violate those rights in the face of the law, in the face of our Constitution, in the face of the Bill of Rights? I say you won't let them, and you will come back with a just and fair verdict, which history will be proud of. That is what we ask. Evidence demands. That very prescient quote from Flint Taylor was said in 1977 during the trial of the cops that murdered Chicago Black Panther leader Fred Hampton. Sadly, not much has changed in the demands of the people to the people charged with protecting and serving the public. Much emphasis has been made in recent history on the unjustified homicide of black citizens by police malfeasance. Another major source of police abuse has been the use of torture by police to elicit confessions and general cooperation by citizens. In this episode, we will talk with former Black Panthers lawyer Flint Taylor about his 50-year battle against police abuse and torture, and inquire if police reform is truly possible. This is Revolution.
I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't stop them. I couldn't hurt them because they had the advantage on me.
Daryl Cannon said he was tortured with was a cattle prod, similar to this, in the sense that there are prongs that come out of it, and these like this, but it wasn't as long as this particular cattle prod. But this is used, of course, on farms and that kind of thing. And Daryl Cannon said that when they brought him to the remote torture site on the far south side of Chicago, that after they did a mock execution of him, and they then brought him into the car and pulled his pants down and shocked him on his genitals, and finally, after the mock executions and the electrocution or electric shocks by this kind of device, he said that he would give a confession.
When we went to the auto pond, this is when I was shocked again in my mouth, because by then I was mad and was saying, I'm not telling you nothing. And I got shocked in my, they put the cattle prod in my mouth, on my mouth, on my lips, and shocked me again.
Sorry about that echo, guys. So, as Kenzo was talking about, he had Daryl Cannon speak to his class. I actually found some old footage of Daryl Cannon explaining his unfortunate police torture into a confession. And in reading, I didn't finish the book, I'm not gonna lie, Flint's book, The Torture Machine, and on all that he's done when it comes to police torture, especially in Chicago, I think you have to understand the political machine that is Chicago. On top of that, we do want to talk a little bit about, before Flint gets here, the Derek Chauvin verdict. We don't want to spend too much time on it, but it is a verdict that came down. And I want to ask you guys, before we get into, I want to ask Kenzo some questions about Chicago, but I want to ask you guys quickly, starting with Angela, ladies first. Ooh, ladies first. No, I was gonna remember that song, did you? What was your thoughts of the 22 plus year verdict for Derek Chauvin?
My first thought is that there are people who are currently sitting in prisons in this country right now who got life sentences for weed, who got life sentences for stealing a jacket. I think of people like Khalif Browder, who was given an egregious sentence for something he didn't even do, and something that was absolutely minor. This motherfucker killed a human being in front of the entire world and got 22 years. 22 years. And I thought it was also extremely telling that this individual's mother had so much to say about him not getting, how he didn't deserve a heavy sentence, but didn't even acknowledge the family. Didn't acknowledge the fact that there is someone that is never going to come home to his kids, never going to hug his brothers again. So I just think that typical fucking America.
There was something that I started watching it when it went live, and like something happened that actually like made me like like almost like physically ill. Like I almost threw up. I had to go to the bathroom and I was shaking. And it was when they had his little girl, which like I know this is like kind of aside from like the 22 years, I don't understand like what type of society we live in. We're like asking a 7-year-old girl, hey, why do you miss your daddy? You know? And like this motherfucker he's not gone to the grocery store. He's not a merchant marine that's delivering fucking goods to, you know, some fucking other country. Like he was murdered by the state. And for ratings, for the show, for the clicks, you're asking a 7-year-old girl why she misses her daddy. Like this whole thing is it literally disgusted me to the point where I was like, I can't deal with this shit right now. I need to like just like run some water, listen to some music, because like it's too much. It's too much. Looking at all these things at once and like what's wrong with all this shit, like sometimes can be too fucking much, because it just shows how rotten we the society we live in. Like the whole thing is just rotten from start to finish. And I mean, I don't know what to say with that. Like just straight emotions right now.
I think for me, what's even more kind of devastating, right, is that he was offered a maximum of 30 years and they couldn't even give him the full time that was up for consideration in the actual case. They brought it down to 22.5. I agree with Angela in that the fact that this man, you know, murdered a civilian on camera and was able to be witnessed by the majority of American society and was still able to walk away with, 22.5 years of a 30-year sentence that was being proposed tells you a lot. But at the same time, understanding the legal system, I'm going to tell you right now, being that he's a police officer, the 22.5 years in some context is going to be shocking to a lot of people, because frankly, cops usually don't even get convicted for this kind of stuff normally. I think we all would agree that if there was no camera, he probably would have walked.
Yeah, cops were pissed he got the guilty. Like if he would have ended up with 2 years, cops still would have been pissed.
Yeah, so I mean, in retrospect, the fact that he took a lot. I mean, there's a whole debate about, for those who are abolitionists or anti-carceral, what do you do in a situation when you have a police officer who is convicted for snuffing out the life of a civilian? Do your anti-carceral or your abolitionist sentiments shut down at that point, and you say, well, I'm glad I want him to get the book thrown at him? And that's a debate that some people want to have. I basically think that, he did deserve to be prosecuted. He did deserve to be punished. And I think that he should have got the full sentence he could have gotten. But at the same time, man, we're going to have a lot of conversations about policing, how we're going to remedy these police abuses, what's going on. Because Jason and I, Marcus, was sharing a text about, and I'm not trying to divert it all from Chauvin, but I think this is all within context, right? The rise of Eric Adams in New York City as probably the next mayor. Former police officer, I believe he was a police captain, rose to one of the highest levels of, ran on a tough on crime campaign, talked, with certain rumblings about, the value of stop and frisk, and how he won super majority of votes in black districts in New York City in this election. And there was a conversation that Jason, I, and Marcus, and I think in another chat over the phone that I was involved with Jason, is it possible that the post-COVID crime wave, where we have 30-40% increase in violent crime, may put the last 20 years of anti-carceral politics, in other words, anti-mass incarceration, evidenced by books going from the new Jim Crow to punishing the poor, all of that discourse, is that going to be put in jeopardy by this current massive crime wave, where people are trying to delegitimize, defund the police, where people are saying that police, there was a New York Times article talking about the high rates of police retirement, police leaving the job early, and so on and so forth. And so the question I'm asking, and I'm not saying I have the answer to this, is that 20-year anti-carceral politics in jeopardy? Could we be looking at a new war on crime or crime bill in the next 8 years? Is that something
I
possible?
feel that's coming, and I'll say this, and this isn't to disagree with the sentiments of the panel. As I kind of have a lot of, as Pascal knows, and if you've watched the show or paid attention, there are a lot of people in my very personal inner circle that are, for instance, abolitionists that actually got their doctorate under Angela Davis, Ruth Gilmore. So, and I worked with the unhoused, lived amongst the unhoused, and was homeless for a time. And that meant that I literally lived with killers and worked with people that murdered people. And I have a different outlook on that, because I think sometimes when we get very emotional about these killings, that's the same sort of sentiment that you see thrown back at people that end up looking like us, that get thrown under the bus, and then when they get back into society, there's just really no jobs for them, right?
But also,
go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead.
You and Pascal have done this in the past. You have made an absolutely excellent point in talking about, when we're talking about who's going to replace the police, like social workers, y'all make the very excellent point of the same system that trains these police to do what they do is the same system that trains these social workers to do what they do to our communities as well. And so I think, because I feel that y'all are absolutely right, and there's folks in the chat that are saying the same thing about the, you can feel a crime bill coming. I think that those of us who know what this is are going to have to be really relentless in calling out poverty as the root cause of this. You are not addressing the root cause, which of course, being the United States, this fucking place has no concept of going to like root causes to address our problems.
The U.S. is the root cause. It is, like, it looks in the mirror, it's like root cause is staring right back. But I think it's too late. Like, Pascal, you're asking the question, like, is this coming? I think it's too late. I think by the time that we are recognizing the signs, the people who are pushing these things, they're got a foothold, and it's going. And that's the thing, is like Adams, I don't know, right? Like ranked choice, there's a chance that I think, yeah, absolutely, Maya Wiley still has a chance to win this. They're still counting the mail-ins. We'll see how that goes. They still have to go through the ranked choice process, which is, it can be, I don't know, goofy. We'll say that, right? Quirky, so a 10-point, almost 10 points behind. We'll see. We will see, right? But at the end of the day, yeah, I think it's already too late. It's already too late. You've got most of the people. Oh, sorry. Yeah, most of the people on these mainstream media already saying, "Hey, crime." This is not a response to police departments being defunded. This is only, they're saying this. They're explaining this as a response to calls for defund the police. This is all kabuki theater. This is all bullshit fucking math. You cannot have a rise in crime on the highest police department budgets that have ever existed, and then calls for, not defunding, just calls for defunding the police is the reason why there's an increase in crime. That does not make any sense. You can't, 1 + 1 does not equal 2 in this situation. So,
hey Mark, I'm glad you're calling this kabuki theater, because I was thinking too about, like, we talk about all things being equal, 22.5 years. There's a point system in the penal system where, like, if you have a certain amount of smaller offenses on your record and then you commit a murder and get convicted for it, that's going to determine how well you're treated. It's kind of like when you get points on your driver's license for all the offenses you get, and then they rack up. It's the same thing with the penal system. And Derek Chauvin is going to go to prison with 0 points on his system because he's a cop. And it's just like capitalism and the penal system. It's like we're fish in water. You can't really explain it to people because they feel like this is, what we're breathing. And so like we need to really get that clear, across to people that, all things are not evil. All things are not equal. When he goes up for parole, it's going to look like he's doing well. There's a whole code of silence that these police departments have. And as soon as there's a crack in there, it everything comes tumbling down. Like they're not going to all rat on each other, and that's how they're able to like commit crime. If any of us did anything that the average police officer did, we'd have a lot of points on our record. But Derek Chauvin, all these people they're able to go to prison, and they're not going to have the same experience that their victims did.
Well, to your point about the point system, I think a lot of people don't understand how police operate. And the 22 years was shocking to me because, again, coming from Oakland, I don't know if you guys watched that movie Fruitvale Station, but the young man, Oscar Grant, that got killed on that New Year's night, the cop that shot him got like 18 months, and the majority of that was time served. He wasn't bad. And it was different because he was a officer for the transit system. But still, he's not, unless he had a fucking gun.
I think it's interesting too is that the crimes that happen inside prisons, those don't get reported. Those don't get added to the statistics.
Yeah,
now, why is that?
I don't know how. I don't know how that works. Again, there's a buddy I have that works inside the prison. So he actually works inside of San Quentin, and he just can't come on the show because he just can't come on the show. He's trying to keep that job. He's close to retirement. I hope he gets that pension. But the stories that I hear from inside the prison are interesting.
We would assume, right? If more authority stops crime, you would assume that prisons are the least crime, involved places, right? This is the most secure. You're always being watched. You got guards everywhere. People can whoop your ass at any point in time. This should be the place where there is zero to no crime. But it comes to a point where they don't report the statistics at all because it just shows right at your face that this shit does not work.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work. And we really should have seen during COVID how much it doesn't work.
Man,
because I don't know if you guys know that a lot of people weren't getting arrested. And some people, so we had a situation, I might have said this on the show before, I might not have. We had a situation where I don't know what actually really did happen. I heard two totally different stories. And if you guys don't know, at a hotel shelter, cameras in hotels are not set up to monitor. You go to a hotel, the cameras that are there to make sure no one's breaking in your car. They don't. When you go to a hotel, a lot of people go to a hotel to cheat on their spouse. They don't really want people to see them going in and out, who they're going in and out with. It's all right. So now you got the groundwork of how cameras work in most hotels, motels too. So a woman came and said that a man that we knew very well had punched her in the face over, she said, a debt for fellatio. She admitted. She said, hey, this dude told me he was going to give me some dope or some money. He gave me neither. I need my dope and or money. And then he punched me in the face and said, bitch, leave. And she goes, I'll admit, I called him a nigger. And then he hit me. And I was like, oh, I am conflicted on so many levels. But let's just get to the bottom of this. The man says, no. The woman's like, you need to call the police. She's bleeding. The man says she cut her face to look like she was bleeding because a black man attacked her. It was just, the whole thing was a mess, right? Law enforcement comes, law enforcement goes, look, we're not dealing with you. Apparently this is the COVID hotel. We literally don't want to touch you people. So if he comes at you again, call us, maybe we'll come back, but we're not fucking with you. So this lady is sitting there screaming her case, right? She keeps calling the police so much that eventually a captain comes down at like 2 a.m. He says, hey man, I just need to get this guy, and because he hit this woman. She said he hit her. We just have to take it. That's just the rules, man. It's like, okay. They arrest the guy. As they arrest the guy, which again, they were pushing back to arrest the dude because Oakland PD did not really have PPE. Like I was shocked they didn't have N95s. They're like, they don't give us N95s. So they arrest the guy. As they arrest the guy, the lady's laughing at him as he's going away in the car. The cops saw that and they just let him out of the car. They're like, we're not going to do the paperwork. They would not want to come to the shelter to do anything because they're like, we don't want to arrest anybody because the jails are too full. They would tell us, hey man, it's COVID, jails are too full, we're not fucking with you people. San Quentin, from what my buddy was telling me a few weeks ago, there's hardly anybody there because COVID just ripped through that prison.
And that's some of the saddest shit is like some of these prisons, some of the stories that are coming out of the prison through COVID. It was bad before. I remember seeing like there's like some fucking prison in Alabama, I think, where like, you know, there's reports for like people like they didn't open cells for days. Like people just having to like use the bathroom in the corner farthest away from where they try and sleep. Like that type of shit. The amount of people who have died, due to COVID complications. Like this is like our whole healthcare system is dog shit in this country. It's not built to help everyone. It's not meant to. And then it's like you go to prison. It's like, yeah, and that's then. And I mean, I'm happy Pascal even brought that up, right? It's like, yeah, where does the abolitionist stand on like, hey, this now terrible person? Like, and that's where it's like, for me. I have an idea of what things can look like. It's nothing, and like, hey, maybe involve having some type of secure place where people can fucking go. That doesn't mean they get unhealthy food. That doesn't mean they get ill-treated. That doesn't mean they can't connect and communicate with the people that still want to communicate with them, right? Like there still needs to be a humane life, as well as like some type of safety. This is not it. This is not even close. It's not geared towards it. It's not meant to do that. This is straight up, if we think someone did something bad, whether it's true or not, that person will be crushed. And by the time they come out of the incarceral state, what are the chances that they will then go on as a reformed person, right? Like, and that's where, whether it's Derek fucking Chauvin, where you're like, honestly, yeah, fucking throw him under the prison. I'm not gonna fucking cry about it. I'm not. I'm human too.
And then hell yeah. And I'm also thinking of the fact that, connected to this is as a society, we will also have to confront this idea under capitalism that some people are disposable, the disposability of people, the expendability of human beings.
You read my mind. I was about to say.
Yeah.
The function of this mechanism of the criminal justice system, policing, carcerality, is to dispose of the reserve army of labor, who will be disproportionately black and brown, and to make them functionless in this society. And as capitalism contracts, which it is right now, in the age of COVID, post 2008, with austerity and all the other things that we've had, there are going to be more people that are going to be marginalized and pushed to that reserve army of labor. We're about to have 8 million Americans lose their housing. Okay? It's about to be major housing crisis supposedly coming upon us when in September, when these housing subsidies and extensions, these foreclosure and rent and all that other stuff extensions are over. What's going to happen? Why is no one talking about the COVID precarity anymore, as if it's over? Why is no one talking about the fact that the unemployment subsidies are going to end in 3 months?
And that's not only that, the unemployment benefits, the extended unemployment benefits that some states canceled early, Joe Biden gave them the green light to hire more police with that money.
Yep.
Like,
Biden
that's
just
what's
made an announcement, I believe Wednesday or this Wednesday or last
Wednesday or Thursday on this crime thing,
saying that. And by the way, in reaction to the increase in crime, he's going to increase funding for police.
Yeah. He's actually given more than double. Well, and it's a proposal to give more than double the amount of money than Trump did, right? Double the money Trump just for a specific program that involves hiring cops. It's literally like the acronym is like COPS. It's literally called cops, but it's all about hiring fucking police. And yeah, double. We need more. But that's the thing too, is like, this is all wild. There's no police department has been defunded. No departments of like, oh, hey, we're firing all these cops. And then there was an increase in crime. You know, all of this shit is because some cops got their fucking fifis hurt and said, I don't want to go to work anymore. People are going to fucking actually look at what I'm doing. And then they're like fucking quitting. And they call it the blue flu, where they just say, oh, hey, I'm quote unquote sick. They got all the fucking leave days that they want. And these motherfuckers just choose to. And this is where you see these motherfuckers aren't here to help us. They're literally there to protect capital. They don't give a shit about people. Wherever the fucking pay tells them to go, that's where they fucking go. Wherever their fucking cop gang tells them to brutalize, that's what they brutalize. That's it. They don't give a shit.
And
this
I mean,
is like the great. Sorry.
So just to cut you guys off, our guest is here, the man of the hour, the OG is back, coming all the way from Chi-Town. He's been fighting the good fight for what, 50 years, Pascal?
It's a long time.
The longest federal case in U.S. history. He missed a video I made where I quoted him, tried to sound fiery. I definitely want to get into what he is doing in Greensboro, but I also want to get into what he was doing back in the 70s when them communists was trying to organize in North Carolina and the Klan came down. He is Flint Taylor. How you doing, Flint?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me back. It's always good to be with you.
Oh, thanks for coming back, man. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. I honestly had no idea that you were. So there's two things I want to let you know. First of all, meet the very large panel. Before it was just me, you, Jeff, and my co-host Pascal yelling about that movie about Flint.
Yeah.
So today we have Kenzo Shibata, a fellow Chicagoan,
right.
Party VP candidate, and also OG Angela Walker, our buddy.
Hello,
Mark,
Angela.
from the Left Flank Vets, and of course you know Pascal Robert.
I sure do.
Hey, Flint, how are you? Good to see you.
I'm all right, man. I watched you all's analysis of the Black Messiah with a lot of interest. As you know, Jeff and I turned down the offer that you all made to sit with you to watch it with some popcorn. But I did watch it a couple of times and took a few notes. But Jeff and I had a blood pact that we weren't going to publicly comment on it one way or the other.
Fair enough.
So we lifted up to you and all the other critics across the board to sink their teeth into that movie.
Hey, fair enough. I get it. I can see why you guys really wouldn't want to revisit that. But
yeah, I had Hy Thurman on my podcast to talk about it from the YPO because I wasn't alive when it all happened. So he was really pissed about the whole scene with the Confederate flag in the movie. I know, Flint, you don't want to comment on it, but I'll just put it out there.
No, who was it? I missed who you said you had on.
Hy Thurman.
Oh, hi. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, he continues to be a good brother, right? All these years. Yeah, you know that not to explain it away, but the Confederate flag to the young patriots who were very much a progressive organization meant quite a bit of a different thing than it means today with the white supremacists using it. I think it was more a declaration of that they were Appalachians from the South, and proud of that, rather than that it was a statement of white supremacy. Although coming across 50 years later, obviously that's what slaps you right flat in the face, is that Confederate flag behind them all when they're talking their stuff,
I think that the thing that's frustrating for me is that even if you took out, like the Black Panthers and just used what the YPO said, you look to the YPO program, look at the YPO literature, you would automatically see, oh, hey, this Confederate flag doesn't actually jive. At least my understanding with the Confederate flag doesn't jive with what they're actually speaking about, right? Anti-racism, attacking capitalism, and making sure that all the people are liberated. It's just not the same fucking thing. And just even the cursory look, take 10 minutes to Google and you'll know it's a little bit different. But I think that today there's a lot of people, and I know Kenzo, you got talked about it on the show, which I'm happy Jason had actually asked you in that show you did before of hey, did Hampton work with racists? And resoundingly no. And I'd actually played that clip on my show a few times where it just says you had to be an anti-racist in order to enter a coalition with Hampton and the Panthers, and it's just that's just where it is.
Well, there was kind of a remake of that movie, of the American Revolution 2 that was on PBS. And the Fred did not go. I mean, they took liberties with a lot of things in that movie, but one of the things was that Fred was the one who went on the north side to organize with the Patriots. And in fact, that was Bobby Lee. Bobby Lee was a very righteous brother who was focused on the north side of Chicago, working with the Young Patriots. And Bobby then moved back to Houston and was an organizer down there for decades. And then he just recently passed away of cancer. And one of the scenes in the more recent piece that the PBS did called the Rainbow Coalition, which it was back then, was High went down and was at Bobby's deathbed. And, so they continued to have a bond over all these decades based on the unity that they forged back in 1969.
Flint, one thing I'd like to get this opportunity while we have you, because we were just talking about it, is, since you have dedicated so much of your life fighting police abuse, particularly police torture, do you have any thoughts on the Derek Chauvin verdict and what it portends in general for the kind of post-Trayvon Martin moment where we've been in for the last 7-8 years, challenging these police's abuses? And one thing we ask also is that, does the post-COVID rise in crime possibly show a sign that there'll be a reversal towards the anti-carceral policy and politics we've been seeing over the last 10, 15 years? In other words, do you think that we could pivot towards a new tough on crime regime with the rise of Eric Adams that we see in New York, this guy who looks like he might win the mayoralty? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on all of those things.
Well, that's a mouthful or a brainful right there, that series of questions. Actually, I was in court on my hog tying case yesterday when the sentence came down. And as you all know, there's a lot of cross currents in terms of, the abolitionist movement, the anti-carceral movement, abolition of prisons. And how does that, if at all, impact when a cop is convicted in the very unusual circumstances when one is convicted and is sentenced? And we kind of faced that issue back 10, 12 years ago when John Burge, the torturer, the serial torturer here in Chicago, was convicted of perjury and obstruction of justice. And they had already blown the statute of limitations, so that was all he could be convicted of. He couldn't be convicted of serial torture. So the question became, there was very kind of limited guidelines in terms of what the sentence could be for what he was convicted for. But of course, particularly the people who had fought so hard for his conviction and the survivors of his torture wanted a very, serious sentence, kind of a symbolic sentence in terms of what he did, even though he wasn't really convicted of that. And it was just kind of, at that point, the question of how abolition applies to a cop or a law enforcement person or someone of that nature, a white supremacist, being convicted. How does that apply? And so we kind of forged a kind of middle position on that. We didn't, call for, going way over the guidelines in order to properly punish under the existing rules of incarceration, Burge. But our clients very much were quoted as saying, we want him to suffer the same way we did. We want him to be in jail for as long as we were. The only difference is that we were wrongfully convicted and he was legitimately convicted. So I guess I'm kind of talking around your question on that, but I think it's a very kind of profound question. The book that Maim Kaba just came out with, which some of you I'm sure have seen, deals with that and deals with that contradiction between what the movement or aspects of the movement are demanding in these cases, whether it be Floyd or whether it be all the way back to Burge, which is, prosecution and conviction, with the concept that prosecution and conviction and incarceration doesn't solve any problems. And it doesn't solve any problems in the broader frame, obviously, of regular people, of people of color being massively incarcerated. But it really, in Maim Kaba's view, and I think in the view of a lot of abolitionists, doesn't really serve the purposes of the movement in the sense that it may be symbolic, but it doesn't change the fundamental structure of incarceration. It doesn't change the fundamental structure and realities of policing. So in that sense, whether Chauvin got 22 years or he got 10 years or he got life, in some senses, symbolically means a lot to a lot of people. But in terms of the movement, in terms of actually abolishing prisons and abolishing policing and fundamentally changing the structure, Maim Kaba, who we had the pleasure of working with in the reparations struggle here with Burge. I mean, I can't speak for her, but she spoke to it, her writings with regard to Michael Brown and the fact that there was no indictment in Michael Brown. And on the one hand, that was outrageous. But on the other hand, she explains in detail why an indictment of the cop in Ferguson wouldn't really have changed the fundamental problems and issues that the movement is addressing. So I guess that's kind of a way to talk about the question. I mean, I certainly don't sit here with all the answers to it. I mean, I think it's a somewhat complicated question, and and obviously it was a short-term victory for the murder of Floyd to be approached that way. There was so much pressure on the Minneapolis Police Department because of the video and because of the, worldwide outrage that they did something that they normally wouldn't do. I mean, in so many other cases, because that movement is not as strong and because the facts may not be quite as outrageous, quote unquote, and not captured so profoundly on videotape, that it doesn't happen. And it's left to the movement and the lawyers who answer to the movement and fight for the movement to bring the kinds of cases that we brought in Greensboro, for example, Well, there's a tornado alert here, and one of the phones is going off. Yeah, there's a lot of weather. I wonder what's causing that. I mean, we could divert onto a little climate change discussion. I think we'll stay focused.
That might knock two of us out of the panel.
Yeah.
I want to ask. One of the things that was seen as a big piece of progress was when Rahm Emanuel unveiled the reparations program for Burge victims. All the while, he and State's Attorney Anita Alvarez were hiding the murder tape of Laquan McDonald, a teenager who was murdered by Chicago police in cold blood. I can go through so many layers of Chicago politics in that, because he was murdered in a parking lot that another alderman was shaking down the Burger King that owned that parking lot. But we don't have to get into that part. But yeah, it just seemed like it's optics. Like, it was something that obviously the reparations program is a good thing, but he did that to reproduce, the same toxic system. Like, the code of silence between police haven't changed. But I want to talk more about Burge. I'm really interested in the work you did. And, I think it's one of the things that people need to know about John Burge is that he learned as a young man that colonized people are fodder for his political career. He was a torture expert in Vietnam. The audience might not know this. And he relished it, and he actually worked his way up in the hierarchy by having this tool set of torture that he would use to torture probably a lot of false confessions from captive people they captured during the war. And then he brought that back to his district in Chicago, and that was his way of working his way up. And the state's attorney at the time was Richard Daley Jr. before he became mayor.
Kento, I'm sorry. I just to clarify though, you're saying that he tortured his way to the top.
Absolutely.
Okay, just want to make that clear.
He replicated the exact same practices during the Vietnam War in Chicago with honestly random black men he snatched off the street that fit descriptions. And he was able to work his way up because he was able to basically show the data. The data was he had like 100% convictions on anything that happened in his district. Nowhere else in the city this was happening, but he had the cover of Richard Daley as state's attorney. So like all of these things keep replicating. The state's attorney, the police commander, the head of the Fraternal Order of Police. But one thing I'm interested really in, because of that Chicago machine that we had for so long is deteriorating. It's really been replaced with a more neoliberal social order here. Flint, do you think this brings any new opportunity for fighting, the police brutality in the city, or new challenges? Like, where could we go from here?
Well, I think you lay out, very well the history that we talk about in the book, The Torture Machine, and the kinds of lessons that we learn if we didn't already know them, in terms of the dehumanization, the racism and the white supremacy that started for Burge back in Vietnam. And he learned it there. He was a young sergeant, MP on in a prisoner of war camp. So he may not have actually been a torturer at that point. He was one of the guys who brought the people they were going to torture to the special forces people, to the intelligence people. So he brought them down, and then he turned them over, and then he kind of stood in the background while they were tortured. And at that point, the dehumanization, which was his upbringing on the southeast side of Chicago, became, totally reinforced, as did the tactics that were used there. And so that's when he brought it back to the south side of Chicago. And instead of Vietnamese folks, it was black people. It was black men. And the way that the way they always do it, right, is they create a target, and a target that they articulate as an enemy. And of course, all of those Vietnamese folks that they brought down, whether they were civilians or active guerrilla fighters or young, children or whatever, they were all lumped into, quote, Viet Cong, the enemy. So once you dehumanize them along the lines of race and politics, then you can torture them. You can do anything you want to. You can throw them out of airplanes like they did in Vietnam. You can burn them. You can napalm them. And when you want information from them, or you want to set an example and send them back to the community and not kill them, then you torture them. So they have the devices to electric shock. And that's what Burge brought back to Chicago. And this time it was black people. But the target became gang members, gang leaders. So it was like, let's find a Daryl Cannon. Let's find an Anthony Holmes. Let's find those who are identified as gang leaders, and let's torture them in the same way that the guys that I'm emulating what I saw in Vietnam and what I participated in and countenanced. And so we're starting out in the early 70s in an era under Nixon where mass incarceration and the war on crime and all of that is getting a tremendous amount of traction, and it's really taking off. So lo and behold, Burge is much more successful than probably even he anticipated. And he is getting convictions. He is getting confessions. And he is shooting up the ranks, and he's a sergeant. And then as Daley comes in the early 80s, he becomes a lieutenant, and he gets put in charge of an entire unit of 55 detectives and supervisors who are in charge of investigating homicide cases and other serious felony cases. So now he's really at a point where he can have a major impact on mass incarceration and on violent racist policing. And he continues to do that for another decade under Daley, and Daley's the chief prosecutor, and Daley's using Burge and his cohorts as a political weapon, and calling for such liberal reform things as a parole system that actually let people out before they spent their entire life in jail, using people like Daryl Cannon and Anthony Holmes and others as examples as to why they should do away with the parole system and create maximum minimum sentences and all of that. So Burge is fitting in as a cog, an important, powerful cog in the fabric. And we're not just talking about cops. Cops are the enforcers on the street. Actually, schools are where it all starts, and schools to prison pipeline. But of course, the cops are the face of it on the streets. They're the ones who bring people into the system, and then who puts them away? Prosecutors and judges. Who puts them into the mass incarceration? The Burges testify. They hand the cases over to the prosecutors. The prosecutors are in the rooms or in the station houses where the torture is taking place. They then become witnesses to deny the torture, and then they become the prosecutors. And who's the boss man? Daley. So Daley is told that this torture is taking place under Burge. As a prosecutor, he had an obligation to prosecute Burge. Instead, he continued to use Burge's evidence in case after case, sending more and more people to death row and for life sentences. And so that framework that we see from Vietnam through the time that Daley was mayor, which was 20 years, right up and until Rahm took over, is a template for understanding what can happen, how it all fits in together, how prosecutors and police officers and judges, obviously judges who often are former prosecutors and who are in that fabric of the code of silence, in that fabric of mass incarceration, understand how that entire pipeline works to foment and not only mass incarceration, but white supremacy and systemic racism.
Quick question, Flint. Where does Harold Washington fit in?
Well, everybody, even all of us radicals, and have a soft spot for Harold. And I know you probably would like me to say something other than
all I know about Harold is what I've read, and there's a fair amount of stuff. A lot of it is actually very nice. Pascal came up with Bruce Dixon, who probably gave Pascal what you young people call his tea on Harold Washington. I do know about the tax evasion. That was a bit of a hindrance for him. Pascal, are you a Harold Washington historian?
I'm not a Harold Washington historian, but Bruce Dixon, who was my mentor, worked on Harold Washington's campaign. It was a grassroots campaign. And one thing that Bruce did tell me is that even Harold Washington, if he had lived to see his reelection, possibly would have given into the neoliberals if he had to govern at that time when that shift was going on in Chicago politics. Who knows? But Bruce was very, he was more affectionate of the campaign to get Harold Washington in than the overall politics of Chicago overall.
Again, Harold Washington is one of those people that's not just going against a Republican candidate. He's going against the Democratic Party establishment. Like we'd always talk about people like Shahid running against Nancy Pelosi. You're going against a machine. So how do you go against the machine? And don't give me that whole Chicago's a black city. I know there's a lot of Negroes in Chicago, but still the machine that he was going against, very powerful one. It's not the windy city because of the weather.
Well, the thing is, one thing, and I think Flint may chime in here, is that the traditional notion of how people in the black community would explain Chicago politics is that there are daily Negroes and anti-daily Negroes. And basically that is the line that determines who you are. So when you talk about the daily machine, you've got to remember that there are black people who work within the daily machine. Not for me to get to, bring up Obama, but the whole Obama coterie, those are daily Negroes. Those are daily people. They come out of the daily.
Axelrod considered himself an honorary.
Yeah, they come out of the daily machine. And, that is a very strong dividing line in terms of where you sit in the black community in Chicago. I mean, I remember Bruce telling me that when he was growing up in Chicago, folks in the black community used to call Daley Pharaoh because he was so oppressive. That was the term that he had for him.
Much. Well,
let me give a little shout out to the late great Bruce Dixon. He certainly is someone who should be listened to when it comes to Chicago, when it comes to the Black Panthers, and when it comes generally to the question that you're raising. We stepped out of our position of not being interested in or supportive of electoral politics for a hot minute when Harold was running. When back in the 70s during the Hampton case, when we exposed the fact that the government had covered up FBI documents for 200 volumes worth, Harold and another progressive politician named Ralph Newhouse stepped up and supported our call for investigation and prosecution of the FBI. So we had a good relationship with Harold stemming from the 70s. And the tax evasion stuff was, really kind of pretextual, not very serious, but he happened to have the same judge who, Judge Perry, who you can read about in The Torture Machine, who tortured us for 18 months while we tried the Fred Hampton case. So Perry, I think, actually sentenced him. And I think he spent a little time in jail. But in the early 80s, Harold challenged the combination of the Daily Machine and the police superintendent who was running. There was a three-way battle for the mayoralty. And Harold, very early on, took up the mantle of anti-police brutality. And he made it his major issue. And we helped him with it. You know, we supplied him in one very important press conference that he did with survivors of police brutality whom we represented. So we were very taken with how plain talking and how strong he was in terms of an issue that we, of course, was our main fight, which was, you know, police violence and racism. But what we saw was an incredible outpouring of white racism and we saw it firsthand because we actually did poll watching. And what happened was that kind of a Mickey Mouse white candidate who wouldn't have gotten 10% of the vote if the Democrats had run a white person, Saul Epton, or actually it was his brother, Bernie Epton, ran against Harold. And so, and he ran basically on, I'm white and he's not. And he got like 49% of the vote, but it was like being at the polls where, you know, you get the same feeling that it was definitely up south in terms of how white people were coming out to resist the possibility of a progressive black mayor in Chicago. But Harold actually won in the general election after he had beaten Daley and the former police, or he actually still was the police superintendent, Brezek, in the primary. But his ability to actually change things in a fundamental way was totally compromised from the beginning. The city council, there were 29 white machine people of the 50, and they blocked everything he tried to do. And so he kind of fought through that. But as Bruce said, it's very questionable what he could have accomplished, even though he had beaten down that resistance. And it would have been interesting to see what he would have done in his second term. He died just right after he was reelected. But he basically, again, and he would be the first person to say it, make me do it. If people who supported him, like Bruce or lefties who supported him, would come to him and say, "Hey, man, you got to do this. You got to change that." He'd say, "Make me do it," meaning your movement has to be strong enough that I have to do it. And of course, that's a tremendous lesson to the movement. And of course, the movement that came out of the murder of Fred Hampton in the black community and got Harold elected. And in some ways, that same movement was instrumental in the rise of Barack Obama's politics.
That's really fascinating.
Hence the Rod thinking he's part of this coalition.
Say that again.
Part of it.
Say again, Kenzo.
About David Axelrod. You know, he was a part of the Harold Washington campaign as well, but he was a climber. Like, he was a Chicago Tribune reporter who was trying to be a mainstream reporter, saw some opportunity in Harold Washington, and that was his way of kind of buying credibility in the progressive spheres and also in black politics.
It's fascinating that Axelrod actually marketed himself as the guy who knows how to make black candidates marketable to white people.
That's a great skill to have.
And and that's I think there's like something that just needs to be said is like just because someone works on a campaign, like that motherfucker just might have needed a job.
Yeah.
Like let's just start there.
I mean, and Flint and Kenzo, I mean, it's hard. I mean, I grew up in New York, and I didn't learn this until I started reading and really getting my political education, even before my affiliation with Bruce, and even after, more so, is that it's hard for people to understand how important Chicago is to the Democratic Party, particularly in that it is a vote bellwether in the Midwest primaries for Democrats in a space that's generally surrounded by reactionary states. I'd like Flint and Kenzo to really elaborate a little bit more of what makes Chicago politics so central to the Democratic Party, and why, for example, there is a Chicago foundation machine, not even so much the Daily machine, but the liberal foundation world from which Obama comes to life as well, and the role they play in the municipal politics. I would love to hear you guys discuss that. Flint, Kenzo, if you guys want to jump in, please do.
I'm so sorry I brought up Harold Washington, y'all. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we could go on and on about that. But
yeah, I'd like to hear from Flint because I was in diapers during the beginning of Harold Washington, so it's all books from me and stories. So I'd love to hear.
Well, let's take it back to Daily One, and this is where my somewhat limited history of understanding Chicago politics, being a Bostonian originally coming out here for law school, where it kind of starts for me. And you look at the 1960 election, and everybody says, well, Daley stole that election for JFK. But the interesting part of it is that he really didn't steal it for JFK. He stole it for a local machine, Democratic state's attorney candidate who was running against a reform Republican candidate who had in the previous 4 or 5 or 6 years gone after the machine, had gone after the cops. There had been the famous Summerdale scandal where this Adamowski was his name, and he had gone after the cops who had this major corruption scandal. So in dummying up the vote in Chicago, which redounded to Kennedy's winning Illinois and therefore winning the presidency, was not for Kennedy, which he probably didn't even like Kennedy that much, but was for, I forget the Irishman's name, who was running against Adamowski, but he won. So therefore it took all the pressure off the Democratic machine, it took the pressure off of Daley, and it took the pressure off the cops. And so the Democratic Party was beholden to the machine, at least from that point, and I'm sure prior to that point as well. And then, we fast forward through the Democratic Convention in '68, where Daley, enforced the regular Democrats' power against the insurgents in the street and, in the Mississippi, Freedom Democrats and what was going on both inside and outside of the convention in '68. So the Democratic Party had a humongous debt to Daley and the machine here. And I think that kind of give a kind of predicate to understanding and responding in some degree to your question.
Kenzo, you want to add in your experiences with the Chicago political machine?
Well, one thing I want to do, highly recommend a book called Fire on the Prairie. It's a history of the Harold Washington campaign, and it's great for many reasons. The analysis is great. There's a lot of stories in there that just animate the entire story of how the machine works and how the Washington campaign worked against it. And there's a lot of tea in it too. Like, you read it and you find out about Harold Washington's contempt for Jesse Jackson, and he would publicly admonish him. But like what I think Pascal, you're going to find this really interesting in the book, and the analysis is that there were essentially two campaigns. There was a black political class Harold Washington campaign, and then there was kind of a coalition of leftists, good government people, lakefront liberals. And so and often these were warring factions during the campaign, at least according to the book. I wasn't there. But they all, they are all there to get Harold elected. And Harold understood power so well that when everyone was bugging him to run, he's like, okay, get 100,000 people registered. We need new voters if we want people to elect me, because this machine's too goddamn powerful. And they all had to prove themselves to him. And then at that point, the kind of the black campaign would set up an event for him. Sometimes the white the North Side campaign, as they called it, would set up an event for him at the same time. And Harold would sit back and say, okay, well, where are more people going to be? Where's the money going to be? And that's where I'm going to be. So it was I think about this a lot when people talk about how white DSA is. And, sometimes you have to have uncomfortable coalitions like that and just learn to work with each other. And sometimes you're going to have to fight each other too. It's a very complicated history and well worth the read.
Well, I don't know if I'm just going to take this into, another thing that Flint has a whole lot of wealth of information on, but the building of the Rainbow Coalition, and because I'm not willing to accept that Fred Hampton had some type of special DNA, right? That's there are things that we have to be able to learn to replicate success. I just have to believe that, right? There's no angel sent from heaven. So what are the things that actually made those things possible, where a coalition of leftists could actually change material conditions on the ground to the point where the government said, this has to stop, or we are going to do this exact same program that they're doing, but with the U.S. fucking flag on it, right? What are the things that were able to allow people to come together and do those great things? And swallowing your pride is I think one of the things I'm looking back and hey, they just got over some shit. And I don't know, Flint, maybe you can even just talk to that of is there anything that, that we can look back on, especially towards, some of the organizing practices and stuff like that of how do we come together again and start actually swinging for the fences?
Well, I mean, if you think about the history, when Fred and the Panthers and Bobby Lee and were reaching out to and trying to organize not only the Young Patriots and the Young Lords and those who were leftist and, revolutionaries, but also the street gangs, who had, on the one hand, very, some revolutionary tendencies and some very reactionary tendencies kind of rolled into one, and you think of the history of it. Well, one thing that brought all these seeming disparate organizations together, at least, and like you say, enough to freak out J. Edgar Hoover and for him to put the COINTELPRO program into overdrive, was we had the war in Vietnam. We had the black, the civil rights movement becoming the Black Liberation Movement and moving to the cities. Those are two things that were extremely powerful on the streets politically in the 60s. And if you had political consciousness, whether it be, white or black, you had to, in some ways, bring whatever differences, not swallow them necessarily, but, put them in context so that, you could be out on the streets, you could be in the courts, you could be, wherever it took you to fight the government on those so important issues. And it gave, it's like in the trenches, when we were in Greensboro, trying the case for 10 weeks against the Klan and Nazis and the police. And we had a real interesting group of 12 basically volunteer lawyers and law students and activists and survivors, the survivors and the widows of those who didn't survive. And there was a lot of different politics that cut across all of that. But we were in the trenches. I mean, every day the Klan was coming to court. Every day the Nazis were coming to court. Every day I was cross-examining them. My fellow lawyers were cross-examining these people who had pulled their guns out of a trunk and blown away our clients. And so a lot of those political differences, not to say we didn't have struggles about exactly what to do and how to do it and what to say when certain things happened, but those kinds of bonds that go beyond, some sectarian view of politics, last, long after the struggle. And, that's why I'm back in Greensboro 35 years later fighting the hog tying case, because of the bonds that I have with some of the folks down there. And the lawyers that I fought the case with said, hey, man, come back down here and fight this fight. And so I don't know if that's, I don't know how correct that answer is, but, off the top of my head, that's kind of how I would respond to that question, at least initially.
Well, let's get into the hog tying case. I actually have a video queued up. I will do the content warning. I'm not a big fan. I'm probably not going to play the whole thing. It's a bit much. We don't need to see a man perish on screen, but just to give you an idea of what happened. And then, Flint can give us even more details about this. I didn't hear too much about this. The only people I saw really reporting on this was Democracy Now! So I don't know if this is making the rounds in the mainstream media. Maybe Kenzo and Marcus know a little bit better than me. But take a look at this real quick. Again, we're not going to watch the whole thing because I'm not real big on snuff films.
Okay, what's going on?
Man, take me to the hospital, man.
All right, you gotta sit down for me. You gotta sit down.
Okay, stop. Don't stop. Please.
Tell me what's going on.
Stop. You gonna do that? Yeah, hold up, man. No. Hey, I ain't resisting.
Get up.
Hey.
That's what I'm afraid of.
Come on, man. Pop it.
All right, communicate. You got an arm.
Roll over on your stomach.
Keep him on his stomach. Now watch your.
Take it easy.
Just watch yourself, because somebody got blood on him.
Brother.
Take it easy.
Come on.
Give us your other hand behind you. Put your other hand behind you.
Behind your back.
Put your hand behind you. Put your hand behind you. Hey, put your hand behind you. Relax. We're trying to help you. We're trying to help you.
All right, I think that's enough.
Yeah, definitely.
Again,
So what was the ultimate cause of death in that one?
now wasn't he suicidal, Flint? Wasn't that his situation?
Well, they claimed that, because he said, first of all, he said, he's saying, as you can see on the tape, take me to the hospital. And he was in a mental crisis, and he was also, had ingested some drugs. And at one point he said that he was paranoid. He was saying, they're going to kill me. They're going to kill me. And at another point he was saying, I'm going to kill myself. So I suppose you could say he was suicidal, but I don't believe that for a moment. I mean, he was just going through the throes of a mental crisis. Exactly. And he needed not, and the worst thing that could happen to him would be to first put him in a police car where he's more, and not take him to the hospital, but sit there for a while they did paperwork, and then he comes out of the police car and they hog tie him. And we fought now for, and there's a wonderful movement on the street down there, intergenerational coalition that's been fighting to raise up the name of Marcus Smith and put it in the context of the movement for Black Lives, and put it in the context of George Floyd and Eric Garner and, all of the other cases, Breonna Taylor, and et cetera. So they some people may wonder what the hell is hog tying. I mean, did you know that police hog tie people? They treat them like animals, and so we've been fighting this case kind of in secret. It hasn't gotten the national publicity that it deserves. We've been trying to raise it in the context of the Floyd case, in terms of, the restraint by police, white police of black men that lead to their death because of asphyxia or cardiac arrest or that kind of thing. And ultimately, in this case, the medical examiner found that his death was caused by prone restraint, by the hog tying. That contributing to it was the fact that he had drugs in his system. And that was the cause of death that came out. But until it came out, and until the family looked at the videotape, the official story was, he collapsed and died while in police custody. And they put that out and they hid from the public in the same way they tried to hide the reason that George Floyd was killed initially, until the video came out, that they killed him. And they've been, playing defense and cover up ever since. Ever since the family and the family's lawyer at that time, whom I'm working with now, down there, went and watched that video and saw that their son had been hogtied, and that's how he died. And we've been fighting extremely hard to bring this to the public attention. The city government down there has been fighting it very hard, financing private lawyers at the tune of about $1 million so far to fight us. And when we were successful in getting NBC News interested in it, and getting the Marshall Project interested in it, and getting Democracy Now! Interested in it, they came down hard on us. And they're trying to drive us off the case. They've moved to hold us in contempt because they say that we disseminated information to the press. So it's become an issue. Not only the hog tying is a major issue that needs to be seen nationally, but the attack on the lawyers, and not just the lawyers, but the movement. The fact that we cooperated with press, that we cooperated with the main leaders of the movement down there and gave them information. They're attacking us and saying we violated the ethics rules, and that we violated protective orders, and that we should be taken off the case and held in contempt. So we're fighting several battles down there. Of course, the main one is to bring the truth out. We had a big victory yesterday because we've been fighting. What we found out was in Greensboro, this wasn't an isolated incident, but in the previous 4 years before Marcus was hogtied and killed, 300 instances of hogtying. There were, and we analyzed them, and 68% of the men and women hogtied were black, and 15% of them were suffering a mental crisis. So, but they never treated hogtying as a use of force, so they never had any reports on how these hogtyings were effected. We also found that the 8 hogtiers in our case had been involved in 50 other instances of hogtying, including one 3 hours before Marcus's hogtying.
Holy shit.
So we then said, well, since you didn't report any of this, you didn't make your cops treat this serious enough to even write a report, we want those videos. We want to see how these other people were hogtied, to see if they, violated the Constitution the way that we say that Marcus's constitutional rights were violated. And they went to Nut City on that, and they filed like 8-10 different briefs and pleadings. And we got a decision by a magistrate judge saying we get like about a quarter of those. So we were going to get about 50 of them. And so then they appealed to the judge, the district judge. And so that's what I was down there arguing yesterday. And the district judge upheld the magistrate judge. So the city has to give us videos of 50 instances of hog tying. They're, I don't know what they'll do now, but the judge kind of, exposed them as paper tigers yesterday in court. I went down there and did my number, and the judge saw it the way we did. And I guess that, go ahead.
Well, and this is something that's just, it kind of just shows what the police are there to do, right? And I think as leftists and probably most of the people watching, like, hey, ACAB 1312, we'll do all the chants and all that shit. But like, this is really where you can see the goal of police is not to help people, right? And like, what is the danger of a man going through a health crisis, a mental health crisis on the street? Well, it's a very danger to the semblance of some perfect and ordered society. It's a disturbance to someone that might want to sell something, because in the location in which this person is having a crisis. But it's not like there to help the community. And like, as you can see, like the multiple cases of hog tying, the amount of extremes the police and the authorities will go to say, like, not only nothing is wrong, but we will fight you attempting just to get transparency on us telling you nothing is wrong, right? Which at that point is just like, well, that should give out the game. Like, hey, did you clean your room? Yes. Let me see. No, you can't see my room.
Well, there's a history in Greensboro, and I definitely wanted to get into that a little bit with Flint, if you have some time, because the Greensboro case that you worked on, for me, is a fascinating case that I feel like no one ever talks about, no one ever knows about. The group of leftists, were they part of the Communist Party USA?
No, there was something called the Communist Workers' Party, which was a very left, very left at that time.
Very left. I believe it was a white doctor, but there was a lot of black people in the group as well.
Yeah.
As Pascal's point, they got in the church. They got in the black church, and were organizing in a textile mill.
Right.
And the Klan also was in the textile mill. They pushed back against the communist rhetoric, and a extremely violent confrontation happened where people literally lost their lives. Can you tell us a little bit about that? Give us a little history. I'm giving a very bad overview. You can do probably a much better justice to the story.
Well, it was 1979, and as you say, it was a revolutionary organization with very strong revolutionary politics and rhetoric. And they were doing a combination of organizing in the mills, labor organizing, along with anti-Klan organizing. And they were calling out the Klan, and they, had confrontations with the Klan previously. And at the same time, the Klan was organizing. And it's kind of like a deja vu now, and in Charlottesville is kind of a deja vu of what was going on back in the late 70s, where the Klan and the Nazis and other white supremacist organizations in North Carolina were creating a united front. And so that united front of different Nazi organizations and different Klan units across North Carolina predominantly were coming together. So you had, on the one hand, the CWP and its multiracial revolutionary organization calling out the Klan, having anti-Klan demonstrations, and also very powerfully organizing in the cone plants and other plants in the general vicinity of Greensboro. So there was a demonstration in November of 1979 in Morningside, the black housing area of Greensboro. And so it was an anti-Klan demonstration, and the media was there, but strangely, the police were not. And I guess it wasn't strangely, given the history of police and FBI in the South in relationship to the Klan, and how they would not only give the Klan wide berth when they knew, as they did here, that the Klan and the Nazis were coming to Morningside Heights to confront the demonstrators. And not only did the police know about it, but it was a caravan of Klan and Nazis who drove into that demonstration area. And the leaders of that caravan, one was a Greensboro informant, police informant, who had previously worked for the FBI. And there was also an informant from the ATF who had been involved. So what ultimately happened was that those Klan and Nazis approached, stopped their cars, pulled shotguns and rifles out of the trunk of their cars, and mowed down 5 demonstrators: a black woman, a Cuban American man, and 3 white folks as well, all of whom were leaders in the anti-Klan and labor organizing movement. And they wounded 10 others. And it was all on video because the media was there. But of course, the police were not there. And so it went through first a murder prosecution, which was a lay down. The jury was completely white. There were, the foreman was a right-wing Cuban, and they were acquitted. The Klan and Nazis were acquitted. Yeah. Then there was a civil rights trial for violations of civil rights. Again, an all-white jury. Again, acquittal. So that's where we came in with a civil, a damages case, a civil rights damages case, and that's what we tried for 10 weeks in Greensboro. And our theory was not limited to the Klan and Nazis as the murderers, but it raised the questions of the cooperation of the police with the Klan and Nazis.
Well, the Klan was kind of embedded in law enforcement at that point, right? As well as the factory. And there's Definitely. I'm sorry, go ahead. No,
go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
There's a little, I first learned about this. I fortunately or unfortunately am a huge fan of true crime, and there's a show that used to come on A&E called City Confidential, and they did a special on it. I didn't know anything about this case, and they actually showed that press footage, which is really, really frightening to watch, because literally, like Flint's saying, these guys, these protesters at best have 2x4s at best. And the Klan goes, they knew what was up, and they just went and got shotguns out and kind of shot and ran. Mm-hmm. And, cats died right in front of the cameras. And there was a bit of a payout that the survivors got, right?
Well, ultimately, we tried it for 10 weeks under that theory. We had one black man on our jury. Mm-hmm. And there was one northern white woman who had moved down from Connecticut. And those two accepted our theory that the police and, the Klan and the Nazis acted together, and that the FBI was involved too. We had evidence of that. But the 4 Southern whites said, these are communists. We ain't giving them nothing. And the black man said, we ain't leaving till we get, till somebody pays for this. So they worked out a compromise that found a couple of the cops together with some of the Nazis and Klansmen in a conspiracy to kill, but only a couple of the people they killed. And the rationale was the others were still connected to the CWP, so their money would have gone to the CWP in the jury's view. So they didn't want to give anybody who had any political connections any money. So it was a classic compromise which, you know, we debated for a hot minute whether we wanted to, you know, either condemn it or really call it out as a compromise, or whether we wanted to claim it as a victory. And we decided that it was right to claim it as a victory because what we had established for the first time in the South ever was a conspiracy between the police, the Nazis, and the Klan. And that's what we were going to focus on, not on how much money they gave, not on the fact that, you know, they didn't give it to everybody, but that, in fact, that was the message that we wanted to project out of what that 10-week trial had accomplished. So, you know, the next 40 years, the people down there have fought for the narrative. I mean, there was a Truth and Conciliation hearing down there that the city did not partake in, but the people did. And they made their findings, of course. And then just recently, they forced the city of Greensboro to actually apologize and admit that the police were involved and apologize for the, you know, the conduct of the police. And they also set up a couple, kind of a mini reparations, set up some scholarships in the names of Sandy Smith, the black woman who from Bennett College who was shot between the eyes by the Klan, and others. I think there's 5 scholarships named for the 5 that were murdered. So, you know, that was, that was 40 years later. That was 40 years after the fact. So, you know,
they felt very emboldened to do this killing, not just also because the people were black that were protesting, but because they were communists. And one of the interviews I saw with one of the Klan people involved was like, look, if you're going to send me to war to fight communists, why wouldn't I fight them at home?
Yeah, there you go. I mean,
you know, when you hear that, it's maddening because, again, reason why they were down there, they're trying to unionize the textile mills,
right?
Which I believe, and you've been there recently, still aren't unionized.
No. It's, hey, you know, it's the New South, not that much different than the Old South. You know, Greensboro particularly likes to project some kind of image of a liberal, you know, community. I mean, it's probably 50% or near 50% people of color. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it's like a lot of places and where the white power structure, in this instance, finds black folk to front for it. I mean, that now the police superintendent chief down there is black. Mm. The city attorney who's given us the most runaround and who's the mouthpiece for the lies about what happened to Marcus Smith is black. Mm. So, you know, they and one of the main city council persons who fronts off the fact that the cops didn't do anything wrong is black. So, I mean,
black political class at play.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, so I mean, I'm not surprising any of you that might be the case. I'm just kind of giving you the historic and realities of what we're up against. And you know, what's heartening though is Lewis Pitts, who was the lawyer who tried the case with me, or I tried with him back in '85. He's down there still as an activist. You know, he did a really courageous thing. He quit being a lawyer because he said he didn't want to anymore be affiliated with what being a lawyer meant, you know, in terms of the bar. And Nelson Johnson, who remarkably survived. He was a CWP leader, and he survived that morning. And he went on to become a minister and has been a community organizer in Greensboro from then until now. So Nelson and Lewis, along with a lot of younger people, form the backbone of the movement down there that's calling out the city at every opportunity about this case and raising up the name of Marcus Smith. And, you know, it also, the families of those who are victimized and murdered and brutalized by the police, and incarcerated, they often show remarkable strength, whether it's Iberia Hampton and Francis Hampton, the parents of Fred Hampton, or in this case, Mary Smith and George Smith, the parents of Marcus Smith, who come to every demonstration and who, like Lewis and Nelson and the community organizers and us, are being attacked for speaking out. So there's not only the issue of police violence and racism and white supremacy in the hog tying, but there's also a very fundamental First Amendment, or whatever you want to call it, the right to speak out and call out power and call out and speak truth to power and to fight for the narrative about what really happened, whether, and hopefully that's what I was able to do to some degree in The Torture Machine, the book that we have been talking about tangentially here. And here we go again, fighting for the narrative. They fought for the narrative in Greensboro around the Klan case. They fought for the narrative to show that it was a conspiracy, that this is what the government will do. They have informants. They turn their backs when they know it's going to happen, and they participate.
I was talking with a friend that is a leftist organizer, and we were talking about not the futility of the left, but the weakness of the left. I think we're all pretty honest here on this show that we are not as strong as some people probably think we are, right?
Nah, man, the revolution's like days away. Like, we're ready. we are ready.
Push that AOC chick.
Did you not get your kit in the mail?
Yeah, but it was one of those kits you got to put together by cutting out the back of the cereal box. But all jokes aside, one thing that he had brought up that I thought was very fascinating, and why I want to talk to you and Pascal about this. You guys are both of the legal world, right? Pascal is a lawyer. You've been in law forever.
That's a secret I didn't know.
Yeah,
Pascal's been keeping that a secret, huh?
Yeah, that's why he asked long ass questions. That's all the lawyer shit coming out. But seriously, he had brought up a good point. He goes, the right has something we don't have on the left because leftists don't want to do it, and that's infrastructure. They're the judges, they're the district attorneys, they're the sheriffs. They will work in these positions of power where a lot of leftists don't want to do it. Now, you got a law degree and said, I'm going to go down here in Chicago and fight for these wacky guys out here like SDS and the Panthers and the Young Patriots. And didn't you do some work with the Weathermen too?
Oh, yes, we did.
So here you are on the front lines of these fights. You are the legal representation for people that need legal representation. They're getting in big boy trouble. And we're talking about a time where people are getting put under the jail for big boy trouble. And in reading your book, you're doing this for pennies compared to the law office that you're fighting against. It's like a Grisham novel, right? It's like the Rainmaker happening in real life. We talked about it a little bit when you were on the show. Maybe we were talking about it off air about how certain economic conditions that just existed in that time frame. School was a lot cheaper. Rent was a lot cheaper. Life was just a little different. Enable you guys to go, this is our cause and we're sticking to it. A lot of my friends in law that actually get into it for all these great ideological reasons, it's too hard to survive. We had a woman on that's running for a state assembly seat, and she's like, I would be one of 3 people that actually rent in the state assembly if I win.
Mm-hmm.
How do we, and I'm asking both of the lawyers, build some of this power so we can have more leftist prosecutors? Or is that not part of the plan?
What do you think, Pascal?
I think that part of the problem that we have on the left is that our model has always been based on critique and deconstruction, as opposed to what Vijay Prasad said, building a project. And a lot of us, not necessarily that it's wrong, we believe in revolution, but part of the revolution is not necessarily vested in solving the problems of the structures that we have today by participating in them. And some of us will need to ask whether or not we believe in trying to reform the system and building the infrastructure to reform the system, or is the only option to have a revolution and to just, tear it down and build from scratch. And I think that is a valuable question to ask. And I do believe that there is a need to build a left project and being willing to build infrastructure to do it. And I think that in the age of the new left we have today, we have to have this serious reckoning with the reality of what are we trying to build as opposed to simply what are we trying to disagree with or tear down.
I mean, if Flint, if you want to say something, please.
I'd like to hear what Flint has to say.
Well, in terms of that raises the question of what we all think about the Chesa Boudins and the Larry Krasners, and to a much lesser extent, the Kim Foxes, who have been elected mostly in the major cities, but not all in the major cities, to bring certain reforms to prosecution to try to tear down, at least to some degree, mass incarceration. And to deal with things such as bond and things like that, and whether we align with them and to what degree we align with them. I mean, there's almost a knee-jerk reaction that I have, and that I've kind of preached to law students when I talk to them over the decades, which is, if any of them say I want to be a prosecutor, I kind of roll my eyes and say, really? Because, one thing you learn from the book is that over all these years and decades, there's never been a prosecutor, a state's attorney, who's broken the code of silence and come forward and say, yes, I was there when someone was tortured. Yes, that cop committed perjury. I'm not going to prosecute. In Chicago, that's never been the case. And Kim Fox, to some degree, is fighting against that. But just recently, in the Jackie Wilson case, which was a police torture case that we ended up trying for the third time, 36 years after it happened, this past fall, a state's attorney assistant state's attorney who was still active under Kim Fox came in. And he was a prosecutor back in the 80s when Jackie Wilson was sent to the penitentiary with tortured evidence, came in and committed obvious perjury on the stand. And now Kim Fox is under attack, partly by us, for having this state's attorney on her staff and enabling the continuation of this wrongful prosecution 36 years after the fact. So, you're confronted, and that is fodder for the right wing. That is fodder for the Fraternal Order of Police that wants to get rid of her and put in a reactionary prosecutor. Mm-hmm. So that issue of where do we go in terms of, quote, reforming prosecutions? Can we? Is there a project? Was the election of Chesa Boudin and what he stood for and what he stands for, and the reforms that he wants to implement to try to break down mass incarceration. Is that something we support? Is that something, how far do we go to support and participate in that project?
I mean, I wasn't there for his election. I was helping out the Shahid Buttar campaign, and they actually had used the same building. So Chesa came in from time to time to kind of give uplifting. He was the beacon of hope, right? Like, hey, I won this seat with a dad that's been in prison my whole life. I don't know if you know Chase's father.
I do. I mean, I know of him, but I know his mother.
Oh, okay. I figured you knew the family.
Yeah.
And he, from my short interactions with him, he's actually like a real cool dude. But one of the first things he did when he got in the office was he kicked out a lot of people that let a lot of the police shit go. If you were like you said, soft on cops, because there was people talking in the chat like, well, this doesn't sound like it makes a lot of sense. A lot of these prosecutors that were soft on cops in his office, I think he fired like 8 people. So he came in like, look, I'm firing these people. Some of these cats is getting let out of prison. Cash bail is a thing of the past. And he's catching, as some people are saying, he's catching hell right now, and not getting the media attention. Again, it's one of those things where it's very easy to spin when you let someone out of prison that maybe's been in there for like 20, 30, 40 years on a BS charge. As much as we like to talk about restorative justice, I think it sounds good when you're protesting and throwing cans of soup at police, but it's a little different thing when you actually see it in action. And again, Chaser to me is one of those cats that does kind of give hope to a left project, because again, to your point, people that may not be in the legal know, and Pascal knows this, when you want to be a prosecutor from jump, you want to climb a ladder. I'm gonna put some people in jail. I'm going to be a prosecutor. Maybe I'll be a state attorney, and I can move up the political ladder from this position. Not too many cats move up the political ladder from being public defenders. It's an easy burnout position. And he comes from the public defender's office. So does Tiffany Cuban in New York that was running and unfortunately lost. So I don't know. I see hope in that project, and I think there's a lot of value in that project. But I do think there is something to be said about earning your stripes first through the public defender's office instead of just like jumping in the door. Unless it's some serious spook who sat by the door, shit going on, and Pascal is sitting here with these kids in law school.
And this is like, I mean, the mindset that I've had is like, all pillars of the establishment have to be challenged at all times. Like, if any of this shit's gonna work, we have to come with the mindset that we're not just playing golf or tennis or fucking one sport, right? We need to understand that we're a whole school of thought that's going to employ. We've got the, different teams and soccer and football, all of those things. We also got education. We also got a cafeteria. Like, the idea of like a political project needs to be, in my opinion, needs to be expanded in the eyes of leftists, right? It's not just a political party as we know the Democratic Party is now. And it's definitely, not going to be able to be, of some replication of something that we are now, like idolizing, from the past. It very much needs to be built out from the concepts, from the structures that we see, utilize, live with on a day-to-day. And going from where we are now to automated, space fucking communism, we need to understand that there's going to be steps that may not be the full step, right? There's going to be those baby steps in between. And I think that's what we're talking about as far as like, are people able to interject into these positions of power? Because like, can a open communist join the sheriff's department, work their way up to top cop? No, not going to happen. Not in today's world. Could someone like Angela Davis be elected as sheriff? Yes, 100%. If you don't believe that, you just don't realize the fucking world and the things that we have in front of us.
If Angela Davis was sheriff, she'd be like the oldest sheriff in the country.
Angela Walker. It's so easy. My bad. Angela Walker. But like, that's the thing, and it's like it is an understanding that like we are just nowhere fucking near where we need to be. It's not accepting or just gonna like revel in these tiny little victories. It's just an understanding that like there's a lot of positions where power is sitting unopposed, and having leftists be educated and have the abilities to actually push against those power structures at every single position. Are we going to win every battle? No. We're going to win a whole fuck ton more than we are now. with this crabs in the bucket strategy of me just saying, no, your idea isn't good. You need to follow me specifically. That's definitely not going to fucking work. And like you said, and like Pascal just repeat, saying what VJ is saying, like, yeah, like the left needs a project, and like it needs to be to actually just like solidify. There's a lot of fucking organizations where part of their work is convincing other people that other left organizations aren't good enough.
That's right.
And that's fucking stupid. Sorry for cursing.
Don't be. This is a curse-free zone here, Marcus.
Well, my bad. Sorry, kids.
I'll need a quarter in the swear jar.
And yeah, Flint, I can't imagine with all the people you've rolled with, like cursing is definitely not a thing. I apologize. The virgin ears that have come, but no.
Well, as Pascal knows, lawyers never curse. I just have to remember not to curse in court. That's about as far as
in reading your book. It's interesting hearing you talk about all these blow-ups you have in these trials, and how you get treated when you have these blow-ups in these trials, especially, of course, the Hampton trial, which I'm sure was full of this motherfucker. Like I'm sure that was probably uttered a lot under everybody's breath.
You bet. You bet. Definitely.
Oh, also, side note, I did watch that movie that who's the guy that we all hate on here? He makes TV shows that suck. Aaron Sorkin?
Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I watched that movie.
Yeah.
Whoa.
You talk about once over lightly.
The trial of the Chicago. What is it?
Well, it starts out with the wrong title, right? I mean, we fought.
507?
Yeah. I mean, it was. I mean, one thing that right from jump, and you could piss people off in 1969 about, was to call it the Chicago 7 and to leave Bobby Seale out of it. So he makes a movie, and he admits that he didn't know a damn thing about it until somebody told him about it. And that's quite obvious. That movie is, that's
the movie was the Chicago 7 was it on Netflix?
Netflix, yeah, where Borat plays Abby Hoffman.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, and he probably does a better job with Abby Hoffman than any of the other actors do with any of the other characters that you knew. I mean, the Kunstler, they had a good actor for Kunstler, but that was about as much like Kunstler as, I don't know what to say, but Bill Kunstler was not he was so much more than how he was portrayed. I mean, he was a major hero to all of our generation of lawyers because of what he did and how he projected and how he fought. And of course, that case was a centerpiece of that. And they kind of made him look like a milquetoast in that case.
Well, because Borat had to be the star.
Yeah. Well, that's
Bruno
true.
Wasn't, they made Abby Hoffman look like he was just, was Abby Hoffman really that annoying?
He was funny. Abby Hoffman, I mean, I think he was kind of a genius in his own, milieu in terms of politics and how he projected his politics, whatever you thought about it. I thought Abby was even more, Borat couldn't really pull off Abby even, although he was the closest. Jerry Rubin, I mean, that was pathetic. And Lenny Weinglass was a great lawyer, unbelievable movement lawyer for 50 years until he died of cancer. And again, you didn't get any feel for Lenny right on down the line, and Bob, and he tried to get Fred Hampton in the game, right? So he has Fred Hampton in court whispering to Bobby Seale. Never happened. And then he has Bobby, Kunstler telling Bobby that Fred's been assassinated, which the only good thing in that movie is it actually shows the murder of Fred Hampton. But in order to get that in, he has to have Bobby Seale still on trial in December, when in fact Bobby was bound and gagged, then taken out and brought back, to Connecticut 2 months before Fred was ever murdered. So, not only is it historically inaccurate, but well, you got me off on a tangent here, man.
And one of the cringiest scenes in that film is that scene where Abby Hoffman and Tom Hayden are talking about how they have mutual respect for each other. I have to assume that this ever happened where it's just like, I read, Borat's like, I read a lot of your stuff. I have a lot of respect for you. I had no idea you had respect for me. It's like we're working towards the same goals, Abby Hoffman. So Sorkin-y that it took a year off my life watching that scene.
Yeah, and hey, it really, really played up the important role of women in the struggle, didn't it? Yeah. I mean, Nancy Kersham, and all the folks women folk who were the backbone of all of it. You hardly heard a whisper about any of them. So yeah, all in all, it was a disaster.
Well, we've taken up enough of your time, Flint, and I appreciate you talking with us today.
My pleasure, you guys. And I really enjoyed it. And keep up your good work and keep raising hell. And when you get that project together, let me know, okay?
We'll do that. We might need you to help put it together.
Okay. Okay. Take care, y'all.
Thanks, Flip.
Peace.
All right. Later.
That is the Flint Taylor, man. He's a good dude. We got to give him the show applause. That's a good dude. When you do this stuff, as Marcus and Kenzo and Pascal will tell you, you get lucky sometimes to meet like OGs in this and learn so much from them. He's been around since the later 60s doing this shit. I mean, going to court, fighting the system.
And I see. So this is something too that like, this is what a person like Flint could do. What a team of actual, motivated leftists who want to do the same fucking thing. Like, this is the revolutionary work. Okay. It's not like, oh, hey, Black Panthers went out and protested the school board to the point where the school board fucking, oh, we're going to do the right thing. No, they just said, we are going to now interject ourselves where everything else has failed and do the right thing. And I think, Jason, you had spoke to the point of just like, Flint grew up in a time where it's just impossible for a young person to go to school, get a education, and then go into work without this mass amount of debt and pressure to not be able to do the right thing, But this is for me, this is where the left, this is where we actually need to start thinking of where we need to go, where we as a larger, broader organizational structure are able to just meet the demands of the people, whatever those demands may be. And in some cases, it might be building out a fucking political project where, yeah, you do run a fucking leftist for mayor. And there is some or a leftist for sheriff. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Like it involves things. And especially too, right. And this is where I'm going to throw some fucking dialectical materialism and shit like that. Right. Okay. Can we get some theory up in this motherfucker? If we are going to understand the American population and their closest step to leftism, it is through electoral politics or direct mutual aid, right? Or getting directly help from a motherfucker so one of those things is steeped in a very direct political ideology, and the other is not. Getting someone a fucking sandwich who's hungry is a great way to bring them over to your side, but it has nothing to do like that. There's no lesson in that, right? But basically, the people who are already galvanized, they are galvanized in an electoral politics structure, right? And I feel like, hey, we need to be able to seize on that, continue growing that, as well as build out some other things. Especially, you talk about like there needs to be leftist collectives that are saying, housing, food, education. We are going to now interject ourselves between the U.S. government and these people, because the U.S. aren't they're not helping. We are going to inject ourselves, and we help regardless of your own politics. But then on the broader possible things, like just using electoral fucking politics, because that's where we're at in the United States. That's where most fucking people pay the fuck attention to, and so it's just a good way to like a good place to fucking start. And and like that's all right too. If like you want to say, hey Marcus, I disagree with you, might be, if you say I'm missing something, fantastic, I'd love to hear. If you're going to tell me no, we shouldn't do that, fuck off, you're a crab in a bucket.
Jackson, Mississippi, poorest city in America, black socialist mayor, and a hell of a project. It's not just the mayor by themselves, it's an entire project, right? Buffalo, New York, that's not just one person by themselves, that's an entire project. And I think what people are missing the point, what we're saying here is, I'm not just saying put a socialist as a district attorney, a sheriff, a police officer, and then walk away and say you won. It is an entire project of you need on the ground movement. What did Flint say about Harold Washington? Where's your movement? Have you ever heard Boots Riley talk about when he went to the mayor Ron Dellums at the time, and first thing Ron Dellums said to him, where's your movement? Ron Dellums, who's got OG cred, say what you will about him as mayor, but he actually does have some OG cred and movement shit. Where's your movement? So we're not silly enough to think AOC is the answer and you walk away and high five and say we did it. Them motherfuckers is nothing because they're powerless. There's no real movement behind them where they can push the machine that is the Democratic Party. We spend a majority of this show talking about the Chicago machine, a city in a flyover state. So think about the entire Democratic machine. When we talk of Foreign Policy Thursday, we have Cuba and Jean on the show, and these guys are giving you motherfucking facts about the inner workings of the State Department and who the fuck is in there. And they're like, well, it's libertarians in there. Why you think they wanted to privatize everything in fucking Iraq? Again, there's an infrastructure to get these people into certain positions of power where they are now dictating policy. And you think that this is bad to want to get people that share your beliefs to get them in there to start dictating policy and slowly tearing shit down?
And that's the thing too, is like
counter revolution. We can get a new counter revolution, right, Pascal? The new 50-year counter revolution.
Everything, and like that's the thing too, is like Gomer is one of my boys. I love you to death, and I still do. There's not one thing that dude says we need to do that I don't agree with. It's just that right? Like we need to start envisioning a left project that is at every point of somebody's life, right? Interjecting itself at every single point of someone's fucking life. Do you got a bed to sleep on? Do you got food in the refrigerator? Do you have a refrigerator? You got a place to stay? Your kids, where they go to school? Is it a good school? Are they learning some shit? Do they got some daycare afterwards? And like literally, and like that's the thing, it was like the Black Panthers started being their own community police. It wasn't just shooting at cops. They became their own community fucking safety organization. That's how the whole thing started. And so if you're gonna say like, hey, if there is a power structure that is able to start literally putting people in places where the existing fucking capitalist structure is, and can say, okay, well we're now taking this. There's a McDonald's in fucking France. Motherfuckers, they close the McDonald's was gonna sell. The workers in that McDonald's just took it over and started feeding people from it. And then eventually the city council is like, oh, okay, well now this has happened. Now we're gonna buy the property and just allow them to keep doing it. Now there's no legal issues to do so. Like there's different ways that you can just literally move into spaces, whether it's an office or like an official, like held like an official position, whether it's a building, like these things are tools. And I want a whole garage.
speaking to like the idea of a socialist sheriff, for example, like you have to look at the possibilities there. Like, yeah, socialist sheriff themselves can't do very much, but if they have a movement behind them who are also embedded in other parts of government, they could end convictions in an area, or not. They can end evictions in an area, like because the police are the ones that actually have to carry that out. But without having other, without having leverage in other parts of the political arena, that sheriff isn't going to be able to do that.
Well, this is the thing. This is the question, and I'm not trying to put rain in the parade here, but do you think that when the members of the black political class, who many of whom were radicals in the late 60s, early 70s, were entering in their political positions, that they thought that they would eventually become sellouts? Do you think that they actually thought that they were eventually going to be treacherous traitors to the values that they had when they were movement activists? No, they did not. What ends up happening is that the infrastructural mechanisms of the institutions are so culturally reactionary that the force of these institutions tend to corrupt even those with the most noble of ideas that come into them, and they surrender to the weight of the normal functionality of these institutions that have an ideological superstructure that are reactionary. My position is not to say that I disagree with you. My position is to tell you that it's not like this doesn't have a history in terms of where this goes. And what I'm saying is that in terms of where this is, what has happened before when this was tried, what I'm saying is that when we are talking about the left entering into realms of political status quo functionality that are used to protect the interest of capital, this takes something that has to be more than just join up and it'll be okay.
Yeah, no,
you got to avoid movement capture. You got to have an element on the outside that are movement activists that are putting pressure and accountability to those individuals that go into those positions of power. You got to find ways to make sure that the infrastructure within these institutions don't simply force the cadre that have been put in positions to surrender to their exigencies. Yeah. We've got to also remember that there are people we have within the left who ideologically are opposed to these institutions and believe that we need to be moving in an anarchistic direction where we have workers' councils that don't even depend on the nation state. And that's a reality.
Yeah. And that's if just to make things clear, is like anything that I'm talking about is not entryism.
I don't want to say this to make it seem like, I don't believe that we should be entering into these realms or electoral politics or institutions or lawyers, or we shouldn't have leftists who want to be prosecutors or defense attorneys. That's not my position.
Yep. How do we keep them from going
to enter into a project of infiltrating the mechanisms of the ruling class? We need to have clarity. We have to have organizational infrastructure, and we need to have cadre. We need to have political, and we have to have cadre dedicated to a cause. And my point is not to discourage this. I
agree with everything you're saying.
But we got to have a discipline of a kind of model in which we are droning in the political education into our membership, into people who join our movements, to be dedicated to ideas and thoughts, so that when they get in these positions, they don't become tools of the same form of oppression.
Let me ask this question to everybody, and including the chat.
And actually, I'm not talking real quick. I am not talking about infiltrating the Democratic Party. When I talk about the party, I am talking about the left building out an organizational structure that touches every point of somebody's life in a positive manner. That's what I'm talking about. If that reminds you of the Democratic Party, like, holy shit, because that ain't no Democratic Party that I've been a part of or seen or heard of. Never, not once. So this is what I'm saying.
Do you guys think this? And I want to give this to Kenzo because he's got a bounce in him, and I want to get his take on this. I feel like a lot of the pushback that we're getting for even saying this comes from the fact that because of this new podcast sphere and because of the influence the internet has, and I was saying this with the Jamu Baraka the other day, we have celebrity politicians that we didn't have before. And don't tell me about you think there was a celebrity before because you might have read it in a book or you read a Jacobin article. I'm letting you know. Nobody gave a fuck about Tip O'Neill. If you think that the water cooler talk back in the day was about Joe Biden and what he was doing in a Senate hearing that wasn't Anita Hill, I got some bad news for you. Wasn't nobody talking about Barbara Lee before 2001, and they don't really talk about her ass that much now. Maxine Waters, the list goes on. So we have celebrity politicians, and there seems to be a pushback on the celebrity of the politicians that makes people not even want to get involved with electoral politics. And I understand that to a certain degree, right? Because you see it on both sides. You have one part of the media sphere that holds these people up as these iconic figures of change, and you have the other part that say that they are grifters, which is a term I fucking hate because everybody's a goddamn grifter.
Hell yeah, I'm a grifter.
I'm a grifter because I make no money and I fucking got to borrow shit and sell clothes, but I'm a grifter. Eat a dick. But seriously, Kenzo, your take on all that?
Yeah, it makes you careful, like, because there are certain concepts that just become so weaponized and they become attributed to a certain personality, either a podcaster or a politician, that you can't, at least online, in online spaces, you can't have a good faith conversation. Unfortunately, because of the pandemic in the past year, with everything pretty much being online, I'm seeing a lot of that collapse. And then even in real life organizing spaces, some of that stuff is coming through. And I guess my bottom line is this: we just need to be materialists, and we have to stop. It's almost like, I don't even know how to put it, like too much superstructure when we weaponize a name like Jimmy Dore. And if that name comes on and it means so many things, he's just a schmuck with a microphone like any of us. We're smarter than him, but at the end of the day, materialistic, materially, we're all just schmuck with microphones.
Yeah.
And, we need to get past all of this celebrity stuff. And, when I look at AOC, I see her as another Democratic politician that came out of, not so much a movement, but of a very highly politicized moment.
Agreed.
In New York City, where a lot of people were able to coalesce around her, local folks, DSA and everything like that. But yeah, we have to be looking for opportunities like her, but always have in our mind that she is someone we have to pressure. She has to be accountable, and we have to be able to say well, in 4 years, we're not going to be part of your coalition, and then you're going to be on your own. Right now, if every leftist in her coalition left, she would probably still be reelected. And that really isn't, that doesn't mean that she's a DSA or a socialist candidate. It means she's just someone else that we have to pressure. We have specific pressure points because she does brand herself as a socialist. And, at the end of the day, we have to look at the material, the actual political conditions we have, and use that to move us towards a better place, because there's no one solution and there's no one person that's going to take us there.
I mean, for me,
leave on that note, Kenzo.
Oh yeah, I keep my kid.
Peace, Kenzo.
Hey, Pete. Hey, Kenzo, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kenzo Shibata.
Angela and everyone else. Take care. Pascal, see you tomorrow.
Yes, for sure.
Oh damn, you burning the candle at both ends. Peace, Kenzo.
Peace.
Also, you guys follow Kenzo Shibata at the Kenzo Shibata Show. Class Time with Kenzo Shibata. There it is, right there. Good friend of show. I'm glad he left with that fiery ending. Angela, as someone that actually did run for sheriff against a very right-wing sheriff, let's bring that up. Again, people keep talking about you can't change it from within. You can't change it from within. I love the fact that everything I say gets dumbed down to I said you have to work within. because that's not what I said. I said that why can't we have a movement and a sheriff? So I love the fact that everything gets dumbed down because people just love to be reactionary because I didn't agree with your exact line of thinking.
Well, no one will ever accuse the United States of understanding nuance. Ouch, I'm gonna say it. We don't do nuances here. We don't. It has to be this way or this way, and it can't be. You know, you don't have to be married to a system at all to understand that you have a platform provided and that you can use that platform to, if nothing else, reframe the discussion. I mean, the thing about, and y'all, folks who didn't know David Clark, you didn't miss anything. He's a jackass. Never got the chance to tell him that to his face, but it's very, you know, this guy's a black sheriff who doesn't like black people. He's only he ran in Milwaukee County as a Democrat, even though he wasn't one. And that sort of thing. His thing was punching down, and my campaign against him simply said, if you are not discussing poverty and lack and the role of the system in taking from people, taking away their access to transit, taking away access to decent housing, taking away their access to living wage jobs, locking people up for marijuana. If you're not addressing poverty, then you're not addressing crime. That was my whole platform. And, you know, running specifically at as a socialist in a city, you know, and I have to say Milwaukee has a history of socialist, you know, very socialist history. I would have actually, had I won, been the 5th socialist sheriff in Milwaukee. You know, so it's not like I was setting a precedent. And also, you know, shout out to Sherry Honkala, who, you know, I looked at her run before I did mine. So, you know, this has precedent. But you take that platform and you talk, you know, a lot of people help people make connections that they feel they know, but they may not be able to articulate that this is the system that we're living under, and how state violence, you know, poverty is violence. Poverty is state violence. And how making those connections for people. So that for me was what my campaign as sheriff was worth.
And yeah, and like this is somewhere. Here's the line, right? It's like for saying like, hey, this is okay, this is not okay. Like we need to be able to reimagine the way politics is done. We need to be able to reimagine like what a quote unquote party looks like, how that party interacts with the greater community. And like when I talk about this party, it is not the Democratic Party, it is not any of the established stuff, right? Like this is about actually building something that wields power.
People don't want to understand power because they want to understand fucking being marginalized.
Well, and that's the thing is,
and
too,
that's
that like,
hold on, I'm mad right now because there's these motherfuckers. Well, what does a socialist DA do? Where do you stay at, homeboy? And I can tell you, if you stay out here in the city, then you'll know. I have blood in my eye, goofy motherfucker. What the fuck does that mean? I want to know what it means in 2021. Like, seriously, we talk about this shit all the time on this show. Are you stuck in 72? Because if so, I got bad news for you. Didn't work out real well in 72. Did it? So what does your project consist of? And don't tell me to read blood in my eye when it's in my fucking shelf. What does your project consist of? Telling other niggas to read blood in my eye? You spent time in prison? What is it throwing cans of soup at cops? Telling motherfuckers that get harassed by criminals all the time that the cops are the bad ones? What does your project consist of? Did your mama make popcorn while you had to watch the crack house raids? Did you have to grab your brother so he didn't look out the window when the drive-bys happened? I want to know what your project consists of. Love to know. Your 10-point program. Yes, smart ass, you got one. And if you repeat the Panthers one, then you don't have one.
And this is like literally with, hey, we get wild, right?
I mean, I'm sorry, man. This is just
no apologies, right? We all gotta apologize. We're right now, we're just talking.
Somebody asked to work they damn got it. That's all it is. This is your podcast. You don't have to apologize for shit. People want to come in correct. This is what they get. It is what it is.
Like, look, man. Look, man. Look. Pascal will tell it to you. I'm not for a lot of the bullshit because I fucking deal with it all the time. I work with it all the time. And when cats are like, oh man, you ain't shit because you talking about socialist yeah, I am. That's part of it. It's all part of it. When Pascal talks about joining the DSA, we joke about it. We literally joke about it, but it's all part of it. Well, how big is your leftist project? If your leftist project is you going, you don't have a project. You just mad at your parents.
So and like this and this is what the thing is. Though, is like from reading the comments is like I feel like I'm saying something and like I feel like we're saying something and it's not being heard. I feel like there's a big miscommunication because it's just if you keep repeating, hey, we can't depend on the establishment. Correct. What we are talking about is an organized left movement that, and when they say organized, that means established. That means it has systems that has structural things that provide, right? Like the breakfast program, that was an established structure, right? And so that is what we are talking about. Literally trying to live the values at every single nook, cranny, and crevice. And it's not about joining the Democratic Party in hopes that someone 20 years down the line will do this, this, and this, and this, right? No. But I'm also not saying, hey, if someone thinks they could get let's do this fucking thing. All pillars need to be challenged at all fucking times. And then really without some type of monumental, I guess, just occurrence happening, long scale fucking warfare coming, and then some type of like, well, everyone alive just agrees with us. Short of that, we have to take baby steps. We just have to, because it takes convincing people we are worth believing in. That's what it takes. And sometimes it comes up with oh shit, this sheriff last year won on 2,000 votes. This sheriff in this position only got 2,000 votes. If you show me that place, run somebody. Run a third grade teacher. I don't give a fuck.
Hold on. I'm gonna put this comment up. Sorry, Marcus. Look, bruh. What am I saying that's making it sound like I'm saying AOC is the answer? I keep saying, and if you've listened to this show for 5 fucking minutes, when it was just me talking in my studio, I was always talking about movements because that's the only thing that was feeding in people across the street for me was a movement. That's how my mom got radicalized, was movements. And she goes and organizes people to raise the minimum wage. She's been doing that shit for over 10 years. Before you niggas thought it was cool because Bernie Sanders said it, that broad was out there. So what the fuck are you talking about that I'm over here sapping for the establishment and saying the only way we can do this is Democratic Party? If you've listened to this show for 5 minutes, I'm never simping on the Democratic Party. All Pascal does is yell about
the whole write a whole damn book
Party
about it.
And so when you talk about, no,
it's not what we're saying.
Dual power projects, is it not a dual power? And to talk about dual power projects, Kali Akuno, who came on the show, who is part of a political project that has Chokwe Lumumba as mayor, the son now as mayor, and trying to change shit in Jackson, Mississippi. What are you not understanding about what we fucking talking about? You talking about, so this woman in Buffalo ain't shit then? According to you, then she just ain't shit. That's what I need to know. If she ain't shit, then say she ain't shit, and everybody that runs for political office ain't shit. That's cool. Then we know what page you on. You just, this is all bullshit. You don't fuck with it. But a lot of the people that maybe you think don't fuck with it understand, as Pascal said a few shows ago, do you want to just say fuck all electoral politics and then it's just a lot harder to get shit done? To even try to? I mean, look at what's happening in Georgia. A lot of these Negroes were quiet for a long time. A lot of that had to do with gerrymandering and power. We talk about that and we acknowledge that when it comes to the Democratic establishment. And now they're out there going, these racist laws and my daddy didn't fight.
Well, I'll say
because
like
it's finally
really,
affecting them and their project.
The DSA in Maine is the reason, is one of the big reasons why we've got ranked choice voting, and the amount of voting rights that we have is the reason why like a bunch of drugs and shit are decriminalized. Green Party too, Angela, like that's the thing, is like we still need to have our own separate private talk so that, you know, we could just understand each other, right? As far as like Green Party politics and stuff. But at the end of the day, like this is my whole stand is like Green Party, all of, and like everything left, like this is where if we actually started like just
why is
moving
everybody
these
always
up.
converted? Are you a fucking fortune teller? Do you know? Do you not have hope? Is it
but
just,
also,
is it just
Jason, looking at that comment, I saw the comment in the chat. My thing is, just because you're going to be subverted means you don't try. I mean, that's my question. That means just don't step up, don't try because you know they gonna come for you. That doesn't.
And that feels like, yeah, we got to know this shit's hard. We got to know, because like, and that's the thing too, is like we just got to know that this is going to be hard. This is going to take time, and this is what I tell the people all the time. I personally want to be helpful to the fucking left, advising, talking about policy, fucking, you know, dealing with electoral politics. That's what I like fucking doing. And you're still gonna need policy programs and all this type of shit when it comes to post rev and all these things. So like this like, and that's the thing too, is like we need to get off of, oh hey, the Democratic Party. We're not talking about working within the Democratic Party. Okay, can we all just, because this is where we need to get past, right? This might be the confusion that started this whole fucking thing. We are not talking about working within the Democratic Party. We are talking about the left project that is necessary, which is unity, which is evident by the conversation that we're having right now. Is that when people that we should trust to be left, right? Because Gomer, we've had this conversation personally about where we can just take the wins. Me and you have had this conversation where we can take the wins. We need to get those wins.
Listen, I mean, we have to understand something. This is a reality. I'm telling you, there are ideological tendencies that exist in the left that are absolutely opposed to participating in traditional political mechanisms that have been captured by the ruling class, meaning running for government, running for political positions. That, I mean, I don't know if this guy is an anarchist. He sounds like one. We have to understand that that's part of the ideological struggle. That's part of the struggle. Okay. And I mean, you guys know that my position is non-sectarian leftist. Why is my position non-sectarian leftist? Because I don't believe, and Jason knows I say it all the time, none of us have the power to pop a grape.
Yep.
And none of us are in a position to be beating our chests to say that we are doing it better than anyone else on the left. Okay? But what we have to understand is this. We are in a position in society in this country where people are suffering, they have been suffering, and sadly, more of them are going to be suffering. All right? We don't throw out that big word precarity for no reason. We got a post-COVID crisis, economic crisis. Possibly we're going to have millions of people out here who are going to be kicked out of their homes. People are going to be losing their unemployment benefits in a few months. All types of economic crises are going to be stacked upon each other in this society. Now, I'm not afraid of revolution at all. I understand it, but I also realize that revolution is something that is only effective when it's well planned and well fought. And if not, you're just ready for a slaughter.
Come
okay?
And that's
And
what
my
I'm like.
position is this. My position. The purpose of revolution is to replace an oppressive political order with something that is effective at meeting the needs of the humanity of a social society at the time. Okay? We're not just talking about being radical and revolution for the sake of being revolutionary. If you don't understand that the goal is to improve the condition of humanity because you want people to live secure lives where they're not suffering, then something is wrong with you. We're not about just pumping fists in the air and saying we're radical, we're revolutionary. We're trying to improve the lives of human beings who have been ground to powder for decades and decades and decades in this society, in this world. The question becomes, what are the effective tools of doing that without us sacrificing our integrity and values?
And lives.
And
lives.
Listen, yeah, because like speaking as former fucking uniformed imperialist.
Okay.
If you were gonna tell me that we shouldn't engage in all these other things, y'all got some training to do. Y'all have got some weaponry to acquire, some jets to learn how to fucking fly. Joe Biden said it openly. These fucking AKs and AR-15s, if you want to take over the fucking, get an F-15, motherfucker. And I know people are about to come out. Oh, what about the Vietnamese? What about the Afghanistan? Oh, you mean the people who have hundreds of years, they were born into this shit. Not us. So we can't get Pop-Tart eating motherfuckers combat ready soon enough. Okay? But while we're doing that, maybe we can decriminalize some shit in some states.
Look, you hold on. How is it not a sacrifice of integrity? Because you can change.
Because material conditions have been changed because of electoral politics. I see it every fucking day. I see it. And is it the end all be all? No. Is it the savior? No. But is it like these are the things? This is just one of the things, right? This is like one of the things that we as a left can do as a broader organized structure to help people, right? That's the goal of the left. That's all we're trying to fucking say is that there's a tool out there. And I guess this might be, Pascal, you're just right of like, hey, anything establishment, fuck it, we can't do it. If that's your position, okay, great. Well, like, anytime that I'm doing some non-establishment shit, I'm gonna be there. We're gonna dap up. But if like I'm also gonna do some other shit that I know helps people.
It's one of those things, man, where it's like if you're so anti, what are you for? VJ Prashad's been doing this shit a lot longer than everybody here on this panel, and when he was like, "You can't be no all the time."
People not get it. Ryan Shane, whatever the fuck your name is. Okay, let's like list it off. Me personally, I was helped by electoral politics because in Maine there's something called fucking tenants' rights. So when my landlord tried to say, "Hey, will you not get any security deposit because bing, 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 bing," I called my fucking legislator who helped write that motherfucking law and say, "How do I fuck this motherfucker over? Oh, help me out." Boom! I send him a fucking email back and I get my fucking money back. My material conditions have been changed. Now we could all say, hey, we want to fucking drop Mao's hammer on landlords. But listen, motherfucker, that ain't an option for me, right? Come on now. That ain't a real fucking option. I got to use what I have available to fight back. And I had a tool available to not most motherfuckers in the country because there was a not a socialist, not a communist, there's someone adjacent to that was willing to say, hey, we can get this fucking done. Is it the end all fucking be all? Absolutely fucking not. But could this thing be actually used to actually galvanize more people into becoming leftists? Yeah, this is some bullshit, right? It's nice that we have these protections, but why are still landlords able to fucking just literally steal your fucking money so they can pay your mortgage, right? These are things that we could utilize to literally fucking help people, galvanize fucking people to the cause. And once again, this is not the end all be all. It's just,
and actually he did defend his position, bitch, because your misogynist ass has been a problem since I've been on this stream. So don't get your ass on your shoulders because somebody got with your ass. You asked for specifics, he gave you one. A change in material conditions brought about by by working with the establishment.
How do I get more specific than $2,000 in my check?
Let's talk in terms of practical, real politics. And as you guys know, I'm a student of, I try to be a student of black politics. We're in a situation right now where the fulcrum of electoral politics, as we say often, is stuck in the neoliberal faction of the Democratic Party. These are people who are career Democrats who vote Biden, Harris, Obama, so on and so forth. These are people who believe in the functionality of the symbolic utility of the Democratic Party. Do you think these people are ready to drop the hammer and sickle and move all the way left? These are people that you have to even begin to explain why capitalism is problematic. And I got news for you. Though that's on the left flank of capital. Let's not even talk about the reactionaries on the right. So what exactly are we going to say to these people? Any form of electoral politics is a waste of time. All these institutions mean nothing. We're going to have to build our own, food shelters and housing programs. We're going to police our own neighborhood. You can't trust anyone, and that's it. And totally get them to abandon any institutional mechanisms? Or are we going to have to slowly wean them off understanding why the institutions that they usually have surrendered themselves to don't work for their own communities, and they may start to need to think about more radical alternatives, which is going to be a gradual process.
Yeah. Are we allowed to keep the post office?
But my question also is, why are we letting the government off the hook of its responsibilities to its people? I am all for mutual aid. I am all for all of the things that people do on the ground to support each other. But at the end of the motherfucking day, these bastards take my taxes before I ever see my check. Can what you are taking from me actually benefit the society that I live in a way where no one is houseless, nobody is hungry? They do have a responsibility to us. I'm sorry. They do. And I understand wanting to do for self, but at the same time, this entity is responsible to us. It's responsible to us.
And this is where things are actually fucking revolutionary, is when you interject yourself and replace the establishment, that system of power that is oppressing people. And that's his thing, is like, so that hey, the party's having a meeting and we are talking about schools, we're talking about roads, we're talking about the little political fucking things that we can also do. We're also talking about housing co-ops. We're talking about all of the things. That's what we're trying to say. Because whatever is your, oh no, this one specific program, this is what we need to just no, it's got to be everything and all. And also understanding the people that we are trying to reach, the people that we are trying to help have an understanding of life through the American fucking, lens, through the CNNs and the MSNBCs and the Fox News. This is the political education that most are dealing with, but they're still being a part of a union in some cases, right? Maybe it's still in some cases, like you might be a teacher. There's ways that we can get to people, but at the fucking end of the day, the way we fucking swell ranks isn't, oh hey, this is just the wrong idea. Fuck it, like let's just talk shit about each other's back. It's literally about all of the projects now coming under a same banner and or at least just having a focused energy, because people feeding people housing people should not be separated from the people who are trying to change the legislation for the better. But that's where I see, and I've experienced because I've worked within it. That's when I see the absolute continuity up to down, right? Between some of these neoliberal NGOs, the nonprofit industrial complex, all the way to the very fucking top. Because the people who run all these organizations make the same amount of money.
Now, listen, I mean, for me, I understand the cynicism people have about using the electoral tool because I look at political history. And for me, as a student of Black political history, I see what happened when people who used to consider themselves radical, like Bobby Rush, got into electoral office and what happened to them.
Yeah.
Eat my ass, man.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I've seen that. So, I'm not unsympathetic to the skepticism people have about participating in electoral politics on any capacity. I get that. But what I'm saying is that it's going to require a two-pronged system. It's going to require heavy focus on developing intellectual clarity in terms of what we're trying to achieve, what our values are, what we're trying to obtain, what our messaging should be, and how to convey that to a population that has been rooted in reactionary politics for pretty much 50 years. Okay? So for me, political education, I take that very seriously. It's really a serious project. And that for me, I think is one of the most valuable things that this is a Revolution podcast, is about. I like the fact that people I know who don't have left politics like this show, who find it valuable. That's a good sign to me. That means that we're expanding the Overton window in their own mind to have them say, hey, maybe there is something wrong with the way I was looking at things normally. That's important, And I think that we're going to have to find a way to take those people and wed them to a project that they can say, I believe in, instead of just simply saying, tear it down.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I want to say this because we've been talking shit for 3 hours, and the last hour has been my hissy fit, and I apologize. I want to say this. I'll leave with this. I'll let you guys have your closing up, your closing statements. Pascal and I argue. Jean and I argue. Kuba, Pascal, and Jean and I argue. Very rarely Doug Lane and I argue, but we have argued before. You can't be serious about this shit if it's a constant jerk-off session.
True.
We push back on ideas. We learn from one another. This is part of to me, the project. Not to argue for argue's sake, right? Not to say we're going to debate so-and-so and embarrass this right-winger or whatever the fuck is the hot topic of bullshit gossip. But these difficult conversations. Because this is kind of part of this left project. And people talk shit about, well, there is no left because they're too busy fucking infighting and arguing. Well, part of it's going to be having conversations that people don't agree with down ideological lines, right? But one thing we have to understand, truly understand, is we have to start understanding power.
Mm-hmm.
Because the right understands power. And again, I don't want to, say who I was with, but it was a pretty decent sized organizer. And that was the first thing he said, is cats don't understand power. So I will say, I apologize if I offended anybody in the chat. I'm sorry. I mean that sincerely. I'm sorry. I got a little heated and I apologize. My emotions got the best of me. But this project, seriously, not this show, but a real left movement takes all of us, and we're going to have to work together. Bottom line, if we want to understand power, if we know what we're up against, we just got to get beyond some of the differences, right? And sometimes to get beyond it, you got to hash this shit out.
Yeah, you know, and like for me though, this is something that like this is the frustrating thing, is because I don't think that there's much to hash out between like the last hour. You know, I think there's some people on the left that were describing some of the ways that they think it's important that a left, you know, can attack the establishment, and you know, either explaining that, and then just having some people, well, I disagree. Well, okay, that's fine. I think we need to, you know, like we need to start looking ourselves like this is a school of thought. And, you know, like a high school, you got a basketball team, you got a football team, you got soccer, you got chess club, right? But it's all, hey, go Bears, right? We're all the same fucking thing. We need to start understanding an actual left movement more in that, like that, where you're no longer talking down because someone isn't in the same effort that you are, because we're all on the same team, right? We need to understand, and this is where I feel that it's lacking, right? And you know, Gomer mentioned a 10-point program. That's actually what I think is lacking. A very simplified goal, and you can look up. There's a Bobby Seals speech where he just explains. He goes through the 10 points and he just explains the people need something simple to wrap their heads around while we continue moving forward. Like the entry point is not the most sophisticated thing, but we need that entry point. We need everyone to realize, hey, if these people are working in this light, these are people who are wearing the same uniform, that are walking in the same direction that I am. They might doing crab walk, right? Instead, and I'm doing cartwheels, but we're going the same direction. We're in the same uniform. These people need support. And actually, too, is like a lot of these things, they buttress up against each other. We deal with all of these issues as if it's the sun sitting up the sky. This is a constellation of stars that act upon each other with great real gravity, right? So we need to understand that. Stop doing the crabs in the bucket thing. If you don't 100% agree with what someone's doing, but you understand that their goal, what is their end goal? What is their critique of capitalism, and where do they want to take the world? If that's the right answer, cool. Let's do this shit together, because without the understanding of how we wield a greater fucking power as a greater organization that does different fucking things, but has just a whole goal of making material conditions better, like that's where we need to be at. And I love y'all, except for old boy Rin. You could get fucked.
Is it my turn? Yo, man. Listen. I think that, you know, we there's no reason for us to be, you know, looking at each other as enemies, man. Seriously, we listen. I don't think we really appreciate how fortunate we are that we all understand that capitalism is the problem. Do you know how few people really understand that in this country? That capitalism is the problem. The fact that we agree on that is a major step. Because I'm still, when I do this show and I present this show to people I've known since I was 18 years old, who are talking about neoliberal solutions, or we need black capitalism, or why we should give all, you know, black politics should be run by black 1%ers. And these are people who I know, who I've cared about, considered friends. I understand that the fact that we all here can agree that capitalism is the problem is a major, major step in the right direction. Now, what we have to understand, we have to ask a simple question. Are we exclusively going to dedicate our energy to tearing this shit down? Or do we think we can get something from the existing system that will improve the lives of people we care about enough until we find a way to reorchestrate this whole system in the way that we want? That's the question. Just tearing this down I'm just saying we're trying to get people to tear it down. It doesn't really provide a project for long term that people can get excited about. What I'm saying is that we should not be afraid of revolution, but leading with the revolution to me is not the best way to go. The best way to go is to lead with the project. This is the new society we want to build. We want to have, say for me, it's about a cooperative economic model. I want to see a cooperative economic model. I want to see interest-free lending. I don't believe in an interest-based economy because that means that wealth will be allocated. I want to see everyone have a quality of healthcare, education. Whatever your paradigm is, I have a paradigm. I have a model. Put the model out there. Let's get people to see how can we transform our society to that model in the existing mechanisms we have. If the state and capital fights us and oppresses us, which being how they work, they will, then we can talk about, well, this is revolution. And how do we go there? But the first step for me is to propose your model. And then when they come with the bricks and hammers, be ready for revolution. Let's talk about building our model first and getting people to say, yes, their model is the best, is not only the better model, it's the best model. And I'm with them. And continue educating people as to why capitalism is the problem. And for me, I see that as a path forward. And if you guys disagree, we can disagree. But still, I'm not going to give up on you because I'm talking to people who at least realize capitalism is the problem. And I realize as someone who's grown up most of my life in the 50-year counter-revolution, how much of a major plus that alone is right now.
The only thing I can piggyback on with that is A, I stand with Marcus. Fuck Ren. B, the motherfucker's irritating. You need to be like, come on here and be faux edgy because it's what you do on other podcasts. Take a hike. And thinking of what you just said, Pascal, about models, I can honestly say people can talk as much shit about the Green Party as they like, and I'll hear it. It's what it is. But the platform that I ran on is something I absolutely fucking believe in. Because when you are talking about an eco-socialist Green New Deal, we laid the shit out. You're talking about a world that is possible. We laid it out. We laid it out. It is possible. It is doable. None of that shit was aspirational. And I don't give a damn if someone is Green Party. I don't give a damn. Anyway, I don't give a damn if you're, just anyway. I don't give a damn if you're Green Party. I don't give a damn what stripe of socialist or non-socialist or leftist you are. Do you believe that everybody has the right to a decent life? I can work with you. I can work with you. You don't have to be part of the Green Party. You don't have to be part of the Socialist Party. You don't have to be a part of any organization to ride with this. Do you care about people being okay? Either you do or you don't. And like what Pascal said about, the amount of people that are here that understand that capitalism is the problem and are able to name it, that is massive. Because most people don't do that. They look at all of the ills that come from capitalism, but don't make the connection to capitalism as a problem. A lot of people are still believing that fundamentally capitalism can be worked with. It's just the way that you work it. And that's not the case. And so I think that, you know, whatever paths that we take to get here, fine. I'm not here for the nitpicky, you know, you have to believe a certain way. You got to lockstep a certain way. I've worked with organizations like that. I've worked with comrades in different organizations that felt like that. Do you give a damn ultimately about the health of people, the health of non-human life on this planet, the health of this planet herself? Do you give a damn? And if you do, we can ride. If you don't, then we have nothing to discuss. And that's where I am with it.
Yeah. No, and this is like the thing is too, is like the time is ticking. Misogyny, racism, police brutality, these are problems that can exist forever. We have a problem that will not allow our species to exist forever. How do we, who understand these problems, and like you're saying, who understand that capitalism is the paramount issue, right? If that's it, if you can hold on to that, then like we can work together, right? Then we can talk. Like, if that's it, like you're in the fucking room. If you can show me and explain to me how capitalism is actually the source of all of these other issues that people want to hyper focus on, and then you build your little nonprofit off of, all of these problems could exist forever, but we are now at a point where we don't have time. We understand that capitalism is not only the driving structure, but is the thing that's fighting against us the most, and the thing that must be destroyed, right, in order for us to move on. And so, like, literally, we don't have the ability, we don't have the luxury to choose who we organize with based off of tactics. We have to organize based off of principles, based off of ideologies, on broad ones. Right? Do you understand that capitalism is the problem? Do you understand that the world is burning and it will soon shed us of it? Do you understand these two things? Because if we do, like, we can work together. I'm about that life. And I do understand that there's some local electoral shit, that there's some state electoral shit that literally changes the material conditions for people's lives going from one day to the next. So I'm not going to never feel bad for doing those things and be a part of it. I understand, and this is something that I've never, like, that you know, I didn't understand, like, I was a mistake in my thought process. Before, I thought federal could be a thing. At this point now, federal is just messaging, right? Like, you don't want to donate to fucking Bernie. You don't want to do but at this point, we're looking at federal as messaging until we actually start solidifying all those little lefty dots, right? And so that's all we're saying. Like, we got to reimagine what we think a political party can do or a leftist organization can do. We got to rethink these things. We have to revolutionize our thinking of these things and then start putting that into practice. That's all I'm saying. We don't got time.
So on that note, now that we are over 3 hours,
Jason kept us here over 3 hours.
I did. I'm sorry.
That's all right. We got time and a half.
And again,
Jason's so rich and we got a union, so
I'll say
it was worth it.
I dance for it. You guys don't see it, but I pop ass. You can't see it right now. I'm doing shit with my cheeks.
Former stripper salute.
I gotta find a picture of me on the stripper pole in West Virginia and make it the fucking background. Thank you guys for being part of the discussion. Did not know the conversation was gonna get so spicy, but again, I can't stress it enough. If we don't have these conversations and we don't get a certain level of heated about it, maybe motherfuckers ain't really that serious about it. You know, I'm that serious about it. I think everybody here on this panel does something in their community outside of say, I'm the savior of the left because I have a fucking YouTube show. Like, I think all of us do like real shit in the community, right? And again, we're gonna have major disagreements, and in major disagreements, she gets heated, and sometimes people say shit that goes beyond that. That's why I don't get into the drama of who said what and debate this person, because I'm not from that world where I can just say shit online. Pascal and Marcus will tell you I was driven out of my house to handle a problem the other day in the neighborhood. So on that note, thank you guys. I don't know off the top of my head who's the guest for Tuesday. Do we have someone for Tuesday, Pascal?
Oh my gosh.
I don't remember off the top of my head. If not, you may see Marcus again Tuesday.
You caught me off guard with that. Do we have a guest for Tuesday?
I think we do. I just haven't looked. I'm sure we do.
Okay.
But thank you guys so much. Thank you, Flint Taylor, for coming back on, talking to us from North Carolina, where he's handling that horrible hogtie case. For the patrons, I forgot to say it, Wednesday. So
I'll be back, Ren. Don't worry, I'll be back.
I mean, look.
Maybe I'll come back.
It gets
That's
to
all it is.
look,
You need attention. There you go.
Hey,
You got.
I'll be, I'm not saying this because I've calmed down. Pascal will tell you when we first started fucking with Zero Books, and I'll leave with this before I say the news about for patrons. I told Doug Lane, I was like, "Are you sure you want us on your show? Because it's kind of white." And he was like, "It's no big deal." And someone had said,
"I got 3 capes."
Comment. So someone called Pascal and I coons in a comment.
Ooh,
I didn't see that. Really?
Oh,
yeah. And I went off, and it got to the point where the dude was like, because again, I'm not for the bullshit. The dude was like, "Well, you're not going to come to California to fight." And I was like, "Oh, word, you're in California. That's perfect. Where? I can get anywhere. I hope you're in the Bay. Here's my address." I was like, I put the address in every video so you know where I'm at. And there was never a response after that. Not to say that dude was a punk or I'm some tough guy. It's just that we get heated in these discussions because, you know, someone may not ideologically believe with us, and then we got to tell them that they ain't shit and their mama's a hoe, and not everybody is cool with being called ain't shit and all this other stuff. Because in the real world, when you just walk up to somebody and tell them they ain't shit, you might get the fuck slapped out of you. And that's kind of the world I come from. So I try to calm the fuck down. I have. I have. Those some dudes say you threaten you. Yeah, I have. If that's my audience, look, this goes out on the internet. I don't know who the fuck listens to it. And if someone gets on here and wants to call me names, like, it's not like I come on the audience and be like, "Hey, give me your lunch money." I mean, there's a big difference between give me your lunch money and someone's like, you know, fuck you, fuck your mom,
something,
fuck your kid.
Yeah, something though is like I think could be helpful, right? There's a little helpful toolbox for people who want to be in spaces and just ask questions from good faith. What did you mean by this? Is a better starting point than what you just said, or at least my understanding of what you just said is wrong, right? It might be just a better way to first get clarification, right? For the people who actually are acting in good faith before saying, this is my critique of your position. Because I feel like a whole lot of this talk today was some people not understanding our position and which is like fine, right? This is human beings. This is communication. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's still fucking peace, love, respect. But yeah, you know, this is an easier way to try and, you know, avoid any of the bullshit. Avoid actually saying like, "Oh, here's a chance where I get to be right." Like,
yeah, Happens.
Hey, can you clarify this position?
Boscar's right, man. This is sports talk radio. You're right. But you know, and I say this all the time. I spend a lot of time traveling. And so the thing that you guys don't understand is that sometimes people would say this shit about me, or not necessarily this podcast shit, because I wasn't podcasting back then, but sometimes people would have some dumb shit to say before you hit a town. And it's like, word, bet I'm finna be in your city. Say it to my face. So that's all I'm saying. Let's not have that level of frustration. And if we do get to that level of frustration, can we just take a second to kick back and go, all right, let me calm down. Sorry for calling you this. I was wrong. And then move on. Because again, the Bigger Left project, we can't be doing that. That being said, if you want to talk to Pascal and you're a patron, we're going to be doing a Pascal patron only live stream where he's going to be taking your questions on Wednesday. Do we have a time yet?
I think we're going with Gene said we're going to go with 8 p.m.
8 p.m. your time. So 8 p.m. Eastern time. I will not be there. I'll be off. Pascal will be taking all your questions.
We're going to have a conversation. The theme of the show is that what was my introduction to left politics and how I got to have the politics that I have. And we're going to talk about it.
Someone asked if we put up a Norm Finkelstein video. When is this? It's going to be Wednesday for the patrons. I'm going to announce it when we have the time nailed down. And there's a few things Pascal and Gene and I have to work out. That's going down. And we've also been talking about adding an extra show on Wednesday. That'll be a little bit more foreign policy based. That may not have Pascal and I. Tomorrow, Pascal, right? It's just growing and growing and growing. Pascal will be on Kenzo Shibata's show tomorrow.
Yes.
What time? Your time?
It's 7 Central Time.
Okay.
Is it 7 Central or is it 7 Eastern?
Oh my
Is it 7 Eastern? It's 7 Eastern then.
Really
7 Eastern? 8 Central? Okay. 7 Central. 7 Eastern. My bad.
Yeah.
Pascal will be on
Chicago.
Kenzo Shibata.
Well, and you're gonna be on with the dude from the DSA that I'm trying to pull. My bad, but like, there's this black dude in the DSA. I was trying to actually kind of have us do a little chat about, Pascal's entry into electoralism.
Oh wow! Now it's an entry into electoralism.
I'm sorry. I had to because of everything. I just had to take that chance. So I'm playing. I'm sorry.
And then I'm going to be on Ben Burgess' show with Anna Kasparian. So
when is that?
Who's Anna Kasparian? She's Armenian woman.
I know who she is. When are you going to be on Ben Burgess' show?
Monday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And then hopefully this week we'll have the new edition of the Dispatch, a video essay series that we do for Zero Books. And this essay will be taking on, I think it'll be about a 6-part series, Cedric Johnson's essay on Huey P. Newton, the forgotten Huey Newton. And part 1, hopefully, will be up next week. I think that's enough shit. And Angela...
We'll be driving a truck.
Angela, thank you for being here. I always like your presence, and I'm always happy when you come on our show.
I'm honored. It is my honor. I mean, that asshole in the chat is a pain in the ass, but everybody else is all love.
Yeah, we can get past that.
It's a thing, man. It is an internet thing, but
is it? Yeah.
They brave behind them keyboards, baby.
Oh yes.
Woo boy. Anyway, yes, I'm happy to be proud. I'm proud to be here.
Have you been listening to our recent episodes?
This is an off-air conversation, Pascal. Quit grinning. I'm trying to wrap the shit up, and you went over here having fucking chit-chatty conversations, grinning and shit. On that note, We are out.